commanded! I move! Yes, now! In Bretonia's name! No hesitation! Charge! We go! Justice
Best
awaits!
voice actress
Ladies
in
fury!
the whole
Fury!
game.
I will go! As commanded!
Love it.
As ordered!
She's the best.
At once!
It's a shame she's not optimal as a lord, because I fucking love
We go!
listening to Rapance scream about Tomb Kings for 20 hours.
As ordered!
Ugh, best campaign. Anyway. How's everybody doing? Suppose I should get Saphir, huh? Okay. How's everybody doing out here today? Hello there, can't watch now, we'll watch later. Thanks for doing these. Jeremy, anytime, good friend. And I started the stream a little early because I just wanted to hear Rapance shout for a while. And Saphir needs just a moment to prepare. Give me that baguette accent now. Very soon, Chosen One. Very soon. In the meantime, I can take you on a little journey. Left screen, do you have my Discord? Nope. Hold on. I know you're seeing the infinite void. I will fix such things. Okay. On my Discord right now, we have a problem, ladies and gentlemen. In the When Our Tournaments tab, we're trying to vote on tournaments right now, and there is an awful lot of 5s, so I can't tell what the hell I'm supposed to be doing Friday. So I need you to go in there and break that tie, no matter how hard Butcher Bird tries to keep it tied. Unless he deletes your reactions, and that's not nice. Don't do that. But get in there, vote for who you want to play this Friday. Should be a lot of fun. This is going to be in a European time zone. And hopefully, Saphir will join this call soon. We can get on with the questions. I did group all the Fae Enchantress questions together so we could just get them out of the way at one point and not re-answer the same question 100 times. So, yeah, that'll be good. Also, there was a last-minute question I just saw come in from Complex Slayer. I'm just going to copy-paste that right into my document. Boop. No, don't be dumb. Don't be dumb. Okay. Good. And a message from Saphir, in case it is not for you people. I will exit out of that briefly. Hello! Hello, I can hear you well. Let's see if the stream can hear you. Stream, if you can't hear him, if you don't hear another wonderful voice besides mine, you need to speak now or forever hold your peace. There's a thunderstorm.
Oh, damn.
Outside.
I
So,
hope I'm loud and clear.
good. You're spectating your own stream?
Yep.
Got it. Well,
I
you
will
missed...
ask the chat.
Sorry. You go.
No.
Okay. All right.
After you, good sir.
Yeah, I started off the stream with just having Rapance run around a Tomb King and scream her glorious voice lines. And now we're here. So, I guess I should do the introduction I do every stream. Welcome, friends. We had posted in the Discord what factions you wanted to hear from. Bretonnia got voted for just behind Wood Elves. So we did that one after the Wood Elf interview with Xiphos. And for our expert today, we have Saphir Namarcil, Saphir, or just Saphir? What do you want me to call you?
Saphir is fine.
Got it. He is an excellent Bretonnian player, a good friend of the RTK clan. I believe you are ODM, correct?
I am.
Yes, so an ODM player, which instantly makes you scum. But you were a star. You were the female lead, I believe, in 1854's Casablanca. And that was a great film. You did excellently.
Correct.
You ready to go today?
Ready when you are.
Let's do it. All right, we'll get to the Fae Enchantress questions in a bit, but we'll start off with something a little more interesting, which is the first question I ask everybody in this interview series. What are the best 3 and the worst 3 matchups for Bretonnia right now? Meaning, if you had 3 bans, what would you ban? Or what 3 things are you most excited to counterpick into?
Alright. When it comes to unfavored matchup for Bretonnia, 2 are really easy to spot out. Lizardman and Dwarf, you really don't want to go into those one. And after that, my third ban right now would be Beastman, due to how Traitor King overcasted works and how hard it is to play around Chariot and single entity Goon squads. Beastman would be the third ban.
Okay.
But when it comes to faction, where I would comfortably pick Bretonnia into, I would say these 3 Elvish faction. Arguably, Wood Elf can be tricky due to the amount of build Wood Elf can try to bring. So an alternate could be Tomb Kings.
Tomb Kings could be another candidate.
Yes.
Why?
Yes.
Now, I've played the Dark Elf Bretonnia matchup a couple times from the Bretonnian side. I'm not a Bretonnian main at all, but I always feel confused about what to bring or what to expect. Can you elaborate on what that matchup usually is? Like, if you and Ice Power were to play it right now, what would the builds look like?
I think the most common build you'll see from Dark Elf is gonna be lots of chaff, bleak swords and spears, maybe 4 to 6 of them. A few Scourge Runners, some cavalry to try to get to your archers, Namarcil, double Manticore, something really common, and which is easy enough for Bretonnia to predict and beat. You need to contest, in my opinion, Dark Elf for the air fight. So what I would run usually is 2 Flying Paladins and a Pegasus Knight, because that will give you enough threat to make sure Namarcil, double Manticore can't do whatever they want.
Just a Pegasus Knight or the Royal Pegasus Knight?
Just a Pegasus Knight.
Okay.
Obviously, Fae is the go-to answer when you've got 2 Paladins. Archers are really good because they can put pressure on the Dark Elf army and they have, well, low HP pools because they are Dark Elves and they don't have any healing, so going range against Dark Elf is not a bad idea. Besides, your cavalry will most likely dominate the fight. If we are taking Questing Knight, for example, Questing Knight will beat 1-on-1 all Dark Elf cav and will go toe-to-toe with Dread Knights. That costs 200 more. That's really tough for Dark Elf because Dark Elf can't really pressure the backlane of the Bretonnian like they would want to. And if you're taking enough chaff, men at arms, peasant mobs, you're gonna most likely win enough time for your archers to do enough damage and for your Fae and cavalry to be aggressive enough to disrupt the Dark Elf side. So Dark Elf sometimes go for different builds, right? I've seen a few Witch Elf rush, because Witch Elves are pretty efficient at killing chaff, and also they are nice to make sure the calf doesn't go around freely. And some Dark Elf player might go for a more defensive build with a ball thrower and try to go for a box, maybe sometime with Blackguard. But all those 3 builds are good matchup for Fae to play in. And if you're going with enough air to make sure you're not giving up air control, well, it's become hard for the Dark Elf to kill the Fae, because essentially their best tool is to dive on her and, well, just try to snipe her. But she's really fast, slippery, and if they die first and you are the one diving on their Manticore and Namarcil with double Paladin and a Pegasus Knight, you're likely to murder the Manticores really fast. And then Namarcil tends to be alone really early in these battles, and it becomes harder and harder as the game goes on for Dark Elf.
Yeah, Manticores do have low armor, so the anti-large of the Pegasus Knights, even though they're lacking armor piercing, will still probably do pretty well, I imagine.
Yes. Yes, and you've got Favor of the Fae to support that air fight. And if you put Favor of the Fae on the Pegasus Knight, they are gonna deal a lot of damage, even with the AoE debuffs of Namarcil, right? They're gonna still have enough melee attacks to rampage the Manticore really fast, and the Paladins are gonna kill the Manticore. You wanna, if you can, you wanna focus the 2 Manticores first, if you're going full on air fight, because if you're focusing Namarcil, then the Soul Stealer is gonna heal her up, right? And she's gonna do a Soul Stealer anyway, because she doesn't want the Paladin and Pegasus to kill her early, and she wants to deal damage back. So if you're killing the Manticore first, the healing she's getting is going nowhere, and she's losing her important bodyguard.
Okay. We could go into each and every matchup in the entire game, but I was particularly interested in that one. The Wood Elves is pretty straightforward in that archers do not like heavy cav sprinting them down, and it could be a little dynamic with flying squads, but other than that, High Elves... You don't have Pendulum or Burning Head that people usually like versus High Elves.
True.
But I suppose High Elves don't win the cav fight with you at all, and then you can kind of just run around the map and do what you want.
Exactly. It's really safe to assume that Bretonnia will win the card fight in most matchup. Apart for a few ones where you have to play more on the defensive side, cavalry-wise, against all Elvish faction, you tend to dominate on mobility, which then leads to compromising the range core of the elves.
But what about the lightly armored War Lions of Krace? How can you stand up against such ferocious might?
You can't really. You just have to run away.
All right. So as long as the High Elves don't take any lions, you'll be good.
Yeah, exactly. Basic.
Yeah, perfect.
Run away from the lion and kill the archers.
We'll transition right into the Fae Enchantress questions so half of our viewers can get on with their days. So the first question would be, how would Bretonnia struggle if the Holy Trinity got nerfed? Fae Enchantress, Questing Knights, and Pox Archers from Stormrunner. Would you even be a faction at that point?
We can go through those three units one by one. I think Pox Arrows would be the less significant, because Peasant Bowmen still are good even without Pox Arrows, just due to the volume of fire and the range and damage they can output. So Pox Arrows would not be the most significant nerf. It would be annoying, but not compromising the faction rank. Questing Knight would be second hardest nerf. They are your only reliable AP damage source. And that's one of the big Bretonnian weakness. You tend to lack AP damage. And Questing Knight are your best unit to provide that. You can't really rely on pole arms or foot squires to bring some AP. So your best AP dealing damage unit is the Questing Knight. So them getting nerfed would be an issue. Especially against, let's say, Chaos. And these factions that can bring high armored, either cavalry or infantry. And well, we already see, if we're transitioning to the Fae question, we're already seeing right now that the best build, most likely, to run into Bretonnia is spam of infantry. Like if we are watching a game of Bretonnian Chaos right now, I can most certainly predict that Chaos will go for 5 Marauder Great Weapon and possibly 5 Chaos Warrior Great Weapon. And those units are really tough to deal with as Bretonnia because they countercharge your cav and kill them quite effectively, and they are rolling over your infantry. Your best tool to deal with spam of infantry is the Fae right now. So if Fae gets nerfed, well, the faction that can rush Bretonnia based on infantry core, so like a Bastigor rush, right, or a Chaos Warrior rush, would thrive more, and Bretonnia would lose one of its best tools to deal with blob fights. So the Fae obviously is the hardest nerf for Bretonnia. If Fae gets nerfed, Bretonnia is gonna drop tiers. Like plural.
Yeah.
If the Questing Knight is getting nerfed, maybe this will affect some matchup, right? But not all of them. Some matchup are not needed and you can get away with Knights of the Realm, and maybe we'll see more Grail Knights to compensate. But yeah, Fae would be the toughest one.
See, that's interesting that, and I think I mentioned it, but Stormrunner asked that question. It's funny to me that Knights of the Realm didn't come up, because I always thought they were the best Bretonnian cav. And I'm probably wrong about that, but the thinking for me was that they were just so generically useful, in that they're cheap, anti-large is nice, they're very armored and shielded, whereas Questing Knights aren't shielded, so I thought they were a little more niche. But apparently you and Stormrunner are agreeing that the Questing Knights are actually the best knight variant.
I would argue that Questing Knight is the best knight unit in the game, the best cavalry unit in the game, period. Just because they bring so much to the table, right? They are fast, armored, well, armored enough. They have more HP than Knights of the Realm, slightly more, but still. They bring AP, they have really good baseline stats, and they are ITP.
I didn't know they were ITP.
Yes, they are. That's one of their strongest point, because they are really strong to combo with Fae. You can have them like act like they can basically act like a small Grail Guardian unit that would run around with Fae, stick in combat, and don't rely on cycle charging to be effective. Right? Like 37 is really good for a cavalry unit. Their weapon strength is quite high as well. Although they don't have great charge bonuses, they are just a superb unit for their cost. And Knights of the Realm are super good as well, right? I think both of them are dominating their category, like price-wise. If you are matching Questing Knight with any cav unit that costs the same price, I'm pretty sure they're gonna beat all of them pretty convincingly.
Yeah.
And Knights of the Realm are kinda on the same spot. Maybe some unit could challenge them for the 950 gold cost, but they are comboing into such a good faction for them that has access to Law of Healing, and that's gonna rely on cavalry fights and mobility fights. So they thrive here too. But the ITP is, I think, the most significant difference between the two of them when it comes to fighting monsters and armor piercing to compensate for that AP lack that creates a weakness for Bretonnia.
Yeah. I had a bad comeuppance with Knights of the Realm. Now I'm going to try to show it on stream, and I'll probably fail, and then I will look like a fool. But I ran them in Empire Knights at one point, and I thought with my anti-large I would cut through them decently easily and get to the back line I wanted to get onto, but the fight just lasted 20 minutes, and I was like, huh, alright. And it was essentially a wash, but I needed my cav, I needed my Knights of the Realm to carry the game, and he needed his Empire Knights to block, and they blocked, and my guys didn't carry the game, so...
Yeah.
That AP can be very helpful in...
It is,
fights.
especially against Empires. You're speaking about Empire. Questing Knight will dominate that matchup because they will cut through every Knight unit of the Empire. They will beat the Blazing Suns that are higher cost than them. Not by a lot, but they will beat them. They will beat them, and they will trade cost effectively really well into grey fights, right? So they are a super good unit for every matchup in which you'll face high armored targets.
Yeah, it turns out if the AI lets me get a second rear charge on them for literally no reason, it does go a little better for me, but it is taking quite a long time to kill those Empire Knights as Knights of the Realm.
Yeah, armor is a big issue here.
So, the next Fae question, if we're talking about nerfs, Bob Tresh asks, in what way would you suggest to nerf Fae Enchantress, but buff the other lords to make, let's just pretend the whole roster, like every lord is viable in a situation. How would you propose to make that happen?
Oh wow, that would be quite a feat.
Let's just focus on Lewin, Rapunzel, Alberic, and Fae.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
I think Lewin is already quite a good lord. He would not require any changes to be an effective one. The only sad part about Lewin is that he can't beat Sigvald one-on-one, or else he would be an interesting pick in that matchup. But besides that, he is really good and has some interesting tools. His Sword of Coron is really key to some matchups. You can do some great things. And he's the second best option after the Fae. So in some matchup, you will go Lewin. And I think that's fine, right? It's like the Lizardman right now. Krogar is a decent option in some matchup. Oxyotl as well. You're not only seeing Mundi. They have a bit more varied playstyle. Alberic, I think, he can't be upgraded to the point where he would compete with Luen. I think he needs to be aimed towards a different build, right? One of the key aspects of Luen is that he regens on its own. So maybe Luen is a good option in build you want to bring all the magics and life. And Alberic could be the way cheaper version than Luen, right? Because he costs way less. That's used in regular heal blobs of Bretonnia. The issue with Alberic is that his items aren't that great. They either cost a lot or not that effective. The AoE anti-large is nice, but you will never take the Trident of Manan. You will never take the Wind Spell, basically, because the cast time is simply too long. And yeah, like Icepower said, the fact that you require to have healing right now when you're bringing Alberic means that in most situations you will pick Fae, which will do more, already bring the healing abilities, and Alberic is not that great of a duelist. He has really low melee defense. Other than that, I honestly think Response will never be great, just because she sits at a weird spot in the roster. If you want to buff her, give her more HP. She has really low HP for a character that will only be dueling. She won't do much else. And if we're talking Fae nerfs, it's really hard to not over-nerf the Fae and kill the faction. So I have ideas in which you could nerf the Fae. One would be lower her speed. One of the reasons why the Fae is so obnoxious to play against is that she's so slippery and can get away really fast. Like, she has super high speed. If you tune down her speed a bit, she'll be easier to coat, and she won't be able to be so aggressive in the early game and attack your army with no repercussion because you can't catch her. So a speed nerf could be nice. Also, I guess you could tailor that to like lower a bit of melee defense. She has the same melee defense as Alberic on Tempest on his mount.
It is one different, sir.
Yeah, it's one different. All right, then don't nerf the melee defense of the Fae. She's already weaker than Alberic. But no, I guess melee defense and speed could be good options for nerf.
Yeah, she's also, I'm realizing as I'm looking around, she is like 500 gold cheaper than Alberic.
Yes. You can increase her cost, of course. That's a good way to make her less such a free pick. If you increase her cost to the point that she is really expensive to bring, that's gonna be an issue. But even still, one of the big strengths of Bretonnia is that everything you're gonna bring on the battlefield is already super cost effective. As Bretonnia, you are one of those factions where if you could bring more than 20 slots, you would go for it. In a lot of Fae build, you will end up with your 20 slots and still have like 1,500 left that you can expend on upgrading some cav or upgrading some chaff. So a cost increase could nerf her a bit, but I don't think that would be the most significant. I think her speed could be the most significant.
So what you're saying is Bretonnia are just human Skaven.
Exactly. Bretonnia is a human Skaven. As a Skaven player yourself, you know that if you would have 30 slots, you would probably fill some of those 20 and more, and I would do the same.
Oh yeah, I would. That's great. Yeah. Also, your peasant mobs are somehow cheaper than my Skaven slaves. Stats-wise, it makes sense, but lore-wise, it's funny that anything is worth less than a Skaven slave.
Ah well, that's the Bretonian way, isn't it?
Yes. So, we mentioned it a bit. This question's from Real Human Being. How would you, if you had been a game designer, how would you have implemented the ability, the blessing... Wait, where's the best blessing of the lady? I thought he was going to say the favor of the Fae. I
The
think
Blessing of the Lady.
is that
you
the
can-
campaign thing?
No, you can click on a Grail Knight unit. We'll have the Blessing of the Lady.
All right, we're learning shit
That's
today.
the Blessing of the Lady is the ability
Oh.
that gives 20 physical resist, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Well, I've played a few games of Bretonnia on tabletop back when I was way younger. The mechanics pretty much work the same, so I think they are really they done a fine job in that. So on tabletop, if I remember correctly, Blessing of the Lady is something that gives you 1 out of 6 save, like I don't know you say that in English, but basically on a dice, it's a 1 out of 6 chance of being saved, as long as you've never routed before in the battle. So it's pretty much the same thing stat-wise. As long as they haven't routed, they will have that 20% physical resist. I think, honestly, they nailed that one. The most important part was making sure it trigger only once, right? So if the knight come back after routing in the game, they won't have the Blessing of the Lady anymore.
Because they ran away.
Oh, yeah, because they ran away. They dishonored their knightly vow.
Huh. All right, all right. That means the Green Knight has 75% physical resistance because he has the Blessing of the Lady and his ethereal physical resist.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Every ethereal unit have 75 physical resistance.
Oh, so they nerfed him
Yeah,
so that
they
could...
tuned down just so that they could give him the Blessing of the Lady because it makes more sense lore-wise.
That's such a weird thing to do.
It is, right? It's like those units that have frenzy and are unbreakable. Why don't you just give them the extra stats? They're not gonna rout anyway.
Paladins do not have the Blessing of the Lady, and neither
Oh.
does Rapunzel or Alberic. All right.
No, that's really sad.
Just Lewin and the
Yeah.
Fae. Jesus.
Only those two.
This is a little bit of a sidebar, but it's one of my favorite thoughts I've ever had about Bretonnia. I realized one day that Grail Knights get perfect vigor, right?
Yes.
Grail Knights and Grail Guardians. You know who doesn't?
Lewin.
Well, him too, but the Green Knight. So I had this thought of like, they're riding around Bretonnia, and the Grail Knights and Grail Guardians get on top of this hill. They're looking around, they're just like, oh, great day, yes, wonderful day, Bretonnia is safe. How about you, old man? You turn around and the Green Knight's like huffing and puffing, just trying to get up the hill. He's just like, fucking slow down. Just a second.
That thought is even funnier now that I realize both Lewin and the Green Knight would be lacking behind the Grail Knights. Damn. That's a sight.
Lewin really got spoiled by being king.
Yeah, he grew old. He grew old.
All right. On the silly note, before we get back into deep meta stuff, from Jeremy we have, is it considered a sin to be attracted to the Fae Enchantress, or is it required of the knights?
Oh, it is definitely required. Have you seen how Ice Power plays Dark Elf? How do you think he got that good at Dark Elf? It's not practice. It's simping for Morassi. If you do the same for the Fae, I'm pretty sure you'll improve as well.
For the lady.
That's how I did it. I've been simping for 5 years now.
Oh wow, chat is popping off. You are a very popular guest.
Oh.
Bob Tresh, no, I have not asked that question yet. Good sir, we are on the Fae Enchantress topic. So, oh yes, this is why I loaded into the game. FNG asks another silly question. Why does Foot Fae Enchantress hover above the ground? Does she use her green poop as rocket propellant, or what?
Oh, wow.
Why does she float?
Actually, that's a good question. I've never thought about that. Don't question the Fae's way. That's not the way of a simp. If you really want to have faith in the Fae, you're not questioning why she's floating around.
Enchantress.
All right. I'm looking at her model now. She's hovering
Yeah.
higher than a horse.
Yes, that's actually a nerf for the Fae.
She can be shot.
Yes, exactly. Especially in one matchup. What's really triggering me with Fae hovering around is when you're playing against Dwarf. No, a pro tip for all the Dwarven players out there. When you're playing against a Bretonnian player that unfortunately ended up playing against Dwarf, if you have a Master Engineer, make him shoot Fae. If you have regular foot characters, right? They'll be staggered for a moment when marching forward. When the Master Engineer hits them, they will move back a bit for a quick second and then keep on moving forward. A Master Engineer hitting Fae will knock her off her feet, and she'll fall down. And you can stagger her for a long time, and she can't reach melee that way. And that's a big issue.
That sounds like a big issue.
Yeah, it is.
Damn.
I've never met any other foot characters that get knocked over by a Master Engineer.
Don't you get me started. I can guarantee you Queek fucking does.
Oh, alright.
He gets knocked over by literally everything.
Oh, damn. Oh, that's pretty sad.
Yeah, I made a video
Oh,
about how sad I am about Queek.
We're on the same boat then.
Yes. Actually, this question you mentioned earlier, but we'll just touch on it. Killing Smalls asked, what tier would Bretonnia be if Fae was just straight up deleted, not replaced by anything?
Oh. Deleted, huh?
Like, let's just pretend she's not in the
Well-
game. How are they? B tier, C tier, D tier? Not a faction.
Right. I think they drop from a best of 5 first pick contender, not one you would first pick first round, but third or fourth, to straight up just a counter pick faction. Because then you really have to rely on a Luan. And it sounds really, well, obvious when you put it like that, but Bretonnia is a faction super predictable. You know they're gonna bring Fae double paladin, or they might bring Luan. There is not much variation here. The build, other than that, will pretty much remain the same. So, at least on that hand, you know what Bretonnia brings. If you are deleting Fae of the game, you will see Luan, or at least Hippogriff Lord every game. And that's really bad for a faction.
Yeah.
Because then you can predict exactly what the enemy lord is and what's the best solution to deal with him. And it's way easier to snipe Luan when you know he's coming than when he's suddenly popping off out of nowhere when you were expecting Fae. So tier-wise, they would not reach as low as High Elf and Norska would be right now, but they would be really damn low. Probably around what Dark Elf were pre-patch, right? Or even maybe a bit lower than that, because they will still have all the other units that make them really strong, right? They will still have Bowmen, Cheap Chaff, and Questing Knights, and Knights of the Realm, but that wouldn't work against a lot of faction. That would not be enough.
Yeah. We talked about the first part of this question, but Deadly Bunnies and Rocket Row asked how best to nerf Phaetonia and bring back Bretonnia. We talked about that, but where would you buff the roster if Fae was nerfed, like we talked about earlier, where you said lowering your speed, lowering your melee defense, or making her a little less tanky, that kind of thing. But what if CA came to you and said, "Listen, buddy, we're doing this to the Fae, but what do you want in return?" Where would you give the roster some buffs?
Right. That's an interesting question. I think unit-wise, or at least playstyle-wise, Bretonnia is played the way it's supposed to be played. So your infantry is not what's going to carry your game, it's going to be your knights and your range units. So on that end, they did a fine job. So if they were to compensate Bretonnia for a Fae nerf, they would have to either make Chaff more sturdier but not a killing power, right? For example, there is one weird unit in the Bretonnian roster, in my opinion, and that's Foot Squires. Foot Squires are meh. Like, they are decent-ish, but they don't really serve a purpose in the Bretonnian roster. They are really a niche unit. And the rest of the army pretty much seems logical. So if you were to buff Bretonnia, don't buff, let's say, Foot Squires or unit like that. Probably you could play around the idea of giving them new range tools. So like a huntsman, akin to huntsman kind of units. Like a peasant unit of hunters. Actually, I had this idea of changing how they envision the Grail Knight unit, because it doesn't really make sense lore-wise to have a 45 unit model of a Grail Knight. So maybe offer a different cav unit than what they are right now. A lower unit size, but with higher HP, enough for them to not die to a one tick of Spirit Leech, and that would make them interesting in some other matchups. So maybe make a Grail Knight unit more akin to Horned ones, because Horned ones don't die to a single Spirit Leech tick. So if you are giving them similar HP but lower unit models, like 36, something like that, it would make a better Knight unit and a better option. Because right now, you are gonna go Knights of the Realm, questing Knights, and the Regiments of Hell on Knights of the Realm, but the rest are more niche. So maybe buff the more niche unit to make them more popular or a better option in some matchup. If you were to nerf the Fae, that is.
The Foot Squires are performing okay against some Saurus Warriors, but it looks like their low leadership is going to lose them this fight. Other than that, but
well,
yeah, they are kind of a weird unit.
They are performing fine, but Bretonnia should not have armored infantry that's performing good. And besides, they are suffering from what the rest of the Bretonnian infantry tends to suffer from, and that is leadership issues. It's not that hard to route them, and you're gonna be when you're playing Bretonnia and playing against a lot of faction, most likely the opponent is gonna go for Wind Spell, because it's one of the best abilities and one of the best options to deal with a spam of archers. So if you're bringing some quote-unquote elite infantry, it's gonna get wiped away by Wind Spell.
Yeah.
And Foot Squires are at that weird spot where they don't have enough armor to just endure like a Burning Head or a Pendulum or a spell like that. Like they don't have enough armor nor HP. And in 99% of the situation, you will pick the Battle Pilgrim instead, which are, in my opinion, just a better infantry unit.
They're shielded.
They are shielded, they have way higher leadership, and most likely that's what you're looking for when you're bringing elite infantry. And they also can clear chaff easier than Foot Squires.
They have better melee attack and melee defense without factoring in that they have frenzy. Yeah. They are just kind of a better unit, aren't they?
Their main weakness is the Burning Head. But like I just said, Foot Squires also take damage from Burning Head, so you're not trading that much.
Yeah.
And they've got similar HP, they even cost less. I think they should cost around the same. So either downgrade the price of the Foot Squire or upgrade the one of the Battle Pilgrim, because they kind of feel like two parts of the same unit. You're bringing one of them for the same purpose, either of them for the same purpose.
Yeah.
But one right now is just simply better than the other.
This is a bit of a salty question, I sense, but from Neckbet and Chasing Rainbows, do people who bring Fae Double Paladin go straight to hell?
Yes, we do, and I've booked my ticket a long time ago.
Fair enough. In which matchups, this is from Odium Loopy, in which matchups is Fae Double Paladin not optimal?
Well, there are not that many, which sounds a bit sad, but the answer to that would be in which matchup would you pick a terror-causing monster that can give you air control as effectively as two paladins. Arguably, I think that's Wood Elf and Lizardman. In those two matchups, I would bring Luen anytime. Against Wood Elf, that is because if you're playing against a Waywatch Kite with a Glady can be a good option to snipe out the Fae and keep her out of melee. And you have just enough tools already to kill a 20 stack or a Tricking box so that you don't need the Fae to kill a box. So Luen, thanks to his Lion Shield, can't really be sniped by Wood Elves. So if you're going Luen against a Bretonnia that's gonna Waywatch Kite you, well, he can't really deal with Luen just straight up diving for his Waywatchers. If he sends his cavalry in to protect and grant some mass, then your cavalry has a nice charge on the Wild Riders. If he's not sending the cavalry and using his net, then your calf can move freely, and you pop your Lion Shield and you're not gonna suffer any damage from the Waywatchers. So Luen is a good option in there, and against Lizard because he'll bring debuff to armor, which is pretty key at killing Saurus and debuffing the big monsters. And he's also your best duelist against Mazdamundi or Solar Engine. Other than that, honestly, Luen can be a decent option in some matchup if you want to surprise your opponent, but he's never going to be as good as the Fae would be. He's good enough to be considered, for example, against Empire, but he's never going to be as effective as the Fae would be. Although, well, you can have the element of surprise if your opponent is really overcompensating for a Fae and trying to really go for a Fae snipe. Let's say against Empire, your opponent really goes hard on, I need to kill the Fae or the Fae is going to kill my entire army. Well, a matchup that is already slightly favored for Bretonnia would be even more favored if you're bringing at that point Luen and your opponent now has way too many tools to kill a Fae but can't really snipe out a Luen, and he's gonna lack enough tools to kill either your archers or your cavalry.
Gotcha. There's one more serious question, and then two more jokes, and then we're done with the Fae Enchantress. You ready?
Let's go.
From Loopy and Pugnabone, should the Fae Enchantress get a mixed lore of magic? If so, what spells?
I saw that question when it got asked in the Discord a few days ago, and I never considered that, right? So honestly, that could be an interesting way, but considering all the Faes in lore, she'll still likely have still Earthblood, right? So that would be a buff to the Fae, most likely, because Fae can bring just Earthblood and still be the same character. So what other spell could you bring? It would make sense for it to be a lore of magic that a faction like Empire would have access to, and more tailored around supporting units. So maybe spell from the lore of light or stuff like that. And you don't really want to see a Fae running around with a net or something like that. That would be pretty silly. She would not have any lore of fire or lore of death, so honestly, I have no idea what spell they could bring her. Maybe the fast protection, something like that, right?
Yeah, I could see her giving the light. I could see her giving the light of battle. It's a shit spell. I know it's a shit spell, but lore-wise, I could see her making a knight unbreakable by like getting into their heads and being like, "Do not run, trust in me." Like,
yes, that would be a very Fae thing to do.
But it would be like one of those spells that it's like, all right, I'm going to cut this every time, but I
Yeah.
could see you're having it.
Exactly. The other spell, like say from the lower flight, would not make that much sense. A net would not be logical. Banishment wouldn't make much sense. Magic missile wouldn't make much sense. So
Time Warp
Yeah,
would be good, but I feel like that would make her... I feel like even CA wouldn't be that dumb to just give her every spell that she could ever need.
yeah,
Because that'd be so good with like her Favor of the Fae already. And then you can throw Piranha's Time Warp, and it's like 65 melee attack and 20% more speed. Go!
although there is one thing about that, which unit would really use that a lot. Because if you're thinking about it, the knight unit are going to be cycle charging.
Yeah.
And by cycle charging, they already reach really high amount of charge attack, the melee attack, thanks to their really high charge bonus. So it would, you would maybe see the emergence of questing knight blobs.
What about Mounted
that
Yeoman?
would be an issue. Oh yeah, of course, blobs of mounted yeoman.
They need Piranha's Time Warp. Alright.
That would be a silly idea.
So, the two last Fae questions are just mostly jokes from Neckbet. Are you mentally prepared to answer Fae questions for 2 hours? Joke's on you, it was only 40 minutes.
Let's go.
And then the last question actually made me laugh out loud. From Artisan Tech Priest West, are strange women lying in ponds a really good basis for a system of government?
Well, yes, that's a long time joke around Bretonnia. I don't know where it emerged, but yes, it is a stable option for the government. I can agree. It's been working for years, so I don't see any reason to change it.
This question, I'm just going to acknowledge that it was asked, but you did answer it already. Why would you ever disobey Loot Lord, I don't know who that is, and take less than 5 Foot Squires? Are Foot Squires good? That's from Real Human Being and Bird, and you already answered that. So we will skip to Jeremy. Should a new player pick Bretonnia? Why or why not? Brand new player.
That's a brand new player, so someone that brand new to the game or the multiplayer.
Let's say they're just entering the multiplayer scene and they think Bretonnia was a sweet campaign.
All right. Well, I could see Bretonnia being a good option, although it would not be my first recommendation. If you're looking to go into multiplayer, not for competitive aspect, but for having fun with friends or online people, I think Empire would serve the same purpose, but be easier to learn and faster to get wins on. Because although Bretonnia is a really strong faction, right? Fae is super good. A lot of the units are super good. It still requires a lot of micro because your killing power is gonna be single entities, archers with low HP, low leadership, and knights. So knights can die fast if matched against the wrong unit. Archers can be overwhelmed pretty easily if you are lacking awareness. And Fae, although she's slippery, she still requires you to micro her out of the bad engagements. So on that end, if you're not looking into competitiveness, Bretonnia would not be such a good option. But if you're looking into competitive, I would recommend picking up Bretonnia. For a few reasons. I think that Bretonnia is one of those factions that where you are practicing it, you're gonna improve on a lot of aspects. Single entity management, protecting range unit, because you're gonna get punished really hard if you don't protect your bowmen. They die super fast, and they can do a lot of hurt if they are well protected. And it's also a faction that's, well, like I said, require you to improve on your micro and have good awareness of which engagement are good for a cavalry and which are not. And also, it's one of those factions that can be played both defensively and offensively. So you can play defensive build around chaff, trebs, archers, and have cavalry be a unit more policing around than really be on the offensive. And you can also go for big rush, where you're gonna go for flank overload, which I think is a pretty important strat to know how to use well, right? So some faction won't teach you how to do a proper flank overload. It's one of the strengths of Bretonnia to go for a big overload with Fae, Paladins, and Questing Knights and all those kind of units. So you're gonna learn some pretty important aspect of the game, and it's one of those factions that's gonna teach you a bit of everything at the same time. And well, it's also, if we're talking meta-wise, a faction that I think will always be good to have in your pocket because it's a good counter-pick faction, and even at times it can be a good first pick one.
Yeah, I still don't really know how to flank overload super well because I play too many defensive factions.
Well, that's also one of the nice aspects of Bretonnia. You can pick the faction even if you are only going for defensive build because they can play well some defensive build and be really effective at it. But they can also suit more offensive player, right? Let's say you are a green skin player who never plays defensively, and you want to get into learning Elvish faction, like High Elf. High Elf, I don't think rush that often. They can do that, but they are not the best faction at it. So most likely you need a transition period from rushing to playing defensively. And Bretonnia is that faction that can give you both. So if you're learning Bretonnia, you can at first learn it the same way you played Greenskin. Rushing your opponent, playing around Cav, playing around Skirmish Cav if you want. Just the infantry is not going to behave the same way. And once you feel comfortable rushing with Bretonnia, you can start to transition towards more defensive play. And if you start to feel confident in defensive play, then you've opened up to playing defensive with other faction. You can play defensive with Wood Elf pretty much, like a Wood Elf 20 stack, for example, can be played really similar to a Bretonian 20 stack played around archers. So that could be a good transition faction if you are not too interested in having Bretonnia as one of your main picks.
I guess I hadn't thought of it that way.
Yeah. On a side note, if I'm not clear enough, and if I'm not understandable enough, please do say in chat. I can go over what I say again.
So far, I've been able to understand you quite well.
I haven't seen too many complain, if any, so I'm hoping it's the French accent is helping giving the Bretonian roleplay, right? It gives authenticity.
So far, I've only heard positive things about it. What? Well, I'm trying to mix up the silly and serious questions. We'll get one more serious one in. Neckbet asks, how hard is it to play Bret?
How hard is it to play Bret, like as a faction, right? Not in a certain matchup. So
yeah.
Well, if we are continuing on the idea of the previous one to answer that one, if you have little experience in multiplayer Total War and you start by picking up Bret, it's gonna be really hard at first because it's really micro-intensive. You can forget about your peasant mob. They are not the most important unit to micro around, but you are gonna have to be really efficient at microing your cavalry and positioning your archers. So it's a faction you can be punished on really easily. A good opponent can punish you for a mistake and you're gonna lose the game really fast. So I would say it's one of the hardest faction to learn how to play, and also it kind of is also one of the easiest in the sense that if you are practicing a Fae build, like the most cliche Fae build you could think of. So Fae, double paladin, 5% mob, 3 to 4 bowmen, 4 to 5 cav, and a few more chef. That's a build you will be able to bring in most matchups. So it might not be the easiest to play at first, because you're gonna have to micro a lot of stuff around. But it's also a build you're gonna be able to bring in a lot of situations. It's not a faction like Wood Elves, where a Wood Elf 20 stack arguably is easier to play than a Bretonian 20 stack. But the 20 stack of a Wood Elf is not playable in all of the matchup. Sometimes you're gonna have to play Waywatcher Kite, sometimes you're gonna have to, quote unquote, Hawkeye the cheese or stuff like that. It's not it's not as easy to learn all of the playstyle of Wood Elves. So, Bretonnia is a hard faction to learn, but it's also an easy one to improve on, right? Play a Fae build, spam it on quick battle, or I don't know where you practice it. You're gonna suffer at first for every mistake you're doing. But once you've learned how to pilot that build properly, there is not much to change on that build to be able to bring Bretonnia in a lot of matchup. So it's a hard faction to learn, but a fast one to improve on, I would say.
That is a very good answer. Do you play campaign?
Not a lot. I did play a lot of campaign, but never finished one.
Well, the question for me anyway was, what was your favorite Bretonnia campaign?
Bordelot, just because it's a land of wine and Alberic, so...
I really enjoyed Rapunzel's personally.
Well, Repens is nice, but she's kinda annoying every time you go in the desert, and she's just complaining about the heat all the time. They didn't bother to make any voice line for the other Bretonnian lord in the desert, so they are not as annoying.
I mean, you're right, but I love her voice lines so much. Fuzzy lady!
She has some great voice line, but every time she's going in the desert, she's that heat, come on, please stop complaining. Start drinking or something, but stop complaining.
I realized that the High Elf Archmages, the Archmages for the High Elves have the same voice actress as
that happens. Yes, I noticed that, I think, yesterday.
That really messed me up, because I'm playing my first High Elf campaign past... I normally give up at turn 10, because I got really sick of Spearman Archer spam, and it's like, I want to use Cav, I want to use cool units, and then the AI are like, listen, what if we take only Archers and Spearmen, or Lothern Seaguard that are both? Get fucked, human player. And I'm like, ugh. But I finally got an Archmage, and then she said Rapunzel things, and I like turned around in my chair, and I'm like, huh?
Where are you?
Is this real? Is this a good character? And it's just some high elf on an eagle, and I'm like, never mind.
Yeah.
This sucks.
That's showing you how much CA cares about the legendary Lord of Bretonnia. One has the same voice line, or at least the same voice actors, as the Archmage, right? So they took the voice actor of a generic Lord and gave it as a legendary Lord to Bretonnia. And the other three legendary Lord when one is great, the other two share the same face as the generic one. So
that was coming up. I have to find that now from Bob.
Yeah, I know. I've shown him that once, right? That they share the same face, and he ended up laughing a lot. And now that's a recurring joke.
Yes, I will have to. Yeah, because the people deserve to know. Not just Bob Trish, but on stream, I have this highlight mage lady. No, do your thing. Wait.
Repens, I think, was before the Archmage, yes.
She was.
But still, like I think that's even worse, right? They were like, who are we gonna get for the Archmage? Oh, just bring the Repens girl back. It's not like people care about Bretonnia anyway. Repens is the legendary Karen.
Yeah. The legendary Karin. Alright, I'm back in the menu. I gotta find Bretonnia again. And Bob, your picture, your thing is somewhere. But Bob Tresh did ask, why do the Bretonnian Lord and Lewin have the same face? And does Alberic too? But he's wearing a helmet.
If you go to single player campaign and watch the preview of the Alberic campaign, he has not his helmet at the beginning. He's putting his helmet on, and he has the generic face.
Oh wait.
And they use the same base template between the Lord and Lewin. So yeah, they all share the same face.
They do.
Maybe that's the reason why I like them so much, right? I'm a big fan of the clone troopers in Star Wars, so makes sense, right? They are clones of one another.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense. Well, okay. You brought up Star Wars. It's also somewhere in here, but...
Yeah. Yes, Taco, I agree.
There we go. Bob Trish and Killing Smalls both asked about the generic lord all having the same face, and then they asked which Bretonnian lord has the best face model. I presume out of the three that are the exact same.
Yes. Oh well. The best model would. I think it's Luan still. At least his mustache is a bit different.
Flying Taco asked, should they add clone commandos to the Bretonnian roster?
I'm afraid that would break balance of the game, but yes, they should.
Did you ever read... Do you read books a lot, I guess I should ask?
I used to read a lot, but no, I haven't read the Commando novels. I know they exist.
Yeah, they're super good.
Yeah, I've heard tales, right? I've seen some short stories about what happened in those novels. So I know a few of the main events happening in those stories, and I probably should pick them up and start reading as well.
Okay. See, I'm conflicted about it because there's some good questions in the chat, and I will get back to you, chat. But like the series is pretty good. It's a good read. It's really fun because it focuses more on the Republic commandos and or clone troopers, and I think that storyline's really interesting because it's like, how would you fare if you were literally one of a million rather than like an individual? But
we can go over that if you want.
Yes,
I'm really into defending the clone commando cause, the clone cause.
Yes, we could go into that, but I will say I would warn you against starting that series because it just ends. There's not an ending. There's a setup for another book, and she hasn't written one in 13 years. And since then, she's written like 20 other things. So like, if you're ready to get blue balls, go for it. It's a fun ride until you come slamming into the end, and there's just nothing there. There was no finish.
I mean, my favorite game is Star Wars Republic Commandos, the original, and you're getting blue balled pretty badly at the end of that one too. So
yeah,
I'm sadly experiencing that. So
that was a really good game.
It was.
In the live chat, we have Sorponce, the legendary Karen. Hank Cyrus, yes. But Contende asked what I wanted to ask you. Would Rapunzel look the same if she had a mustache?
Oh, God.
Does she have the same face model as Lewin and them?
No. She has not. Thank God, she has not. And no, I know some people think that, but no, she doesn't share the same face as the Fae. They have made different models.
Yeah. Would Throg the Troll King look the same with a mustache? Oh well.
Everyone would look better with a mustache.
We must move on. Neckbet asks, is Musion just objectively cooler Bretonnia?
Not a not a very neutral question coming from a accounts main, is it? But no, Musion is not just a better Bretonnia. Although I'll give Musion something. The Red Duke is a really cool model, and the Blood Knights are a really cool cav unit.
Yeah, they.
But no, Bretonnia still remains the coolest faction over Musion.
They don't have to be balanced questions. They're just questions.
Exactly.
All right. Oh, that's a good transition. Also from Neckbet, what are your thoughts on the Bret versus Vampire Counts matchup? Now, I am not a Bret main, and I'm certainly not a Vampire Count main. I'm actually quite terrible at them. But as a viewer, I always think these are bangers. Like watching Blood Knights and Grail Knights kind of jostle around the map and try to get the perfect engagement. And if either player messes up even once, the game's kind of over. And that can sound lame, but it's like really cool when you're watching two high-level players, and it's just like, you know, there's so much pressure because one bad fight and it's pretty much done. Is that not correct, or?
It is. I'm curious. Before I answer that one, what do you think? Do you think Bretonnia is favored in that one from what you've seen? Right? You haven't played in this matchup, right? Have you seen Bretonnia win it more than the Counts?
I just put on the spot and just making a gut call, and someone's no matter what I was saying, someone's going to be mad. But I think I've seen Vampire Counts win it slightly more, but it is usually the better player that wins it. But I would say slightly Count favored. Like if I was putting money on it and you had two clones of Falcon fighting each other, my money would go on the Counts.
And my money would go on Bretonnia. I'm trying to be as objective as possible because, well, since I'm a Bretonnian main, there is a natural tendency to slightly underestimate your own faction just to make it seem a bit weaker than it actually is. And I also have to account for the fact that when I'm playing this matchup against someone that doesn't play a lot of counts, it feels way more favored than it really is. So we've discussed this a lot with AC Moore, right? With a really good V-counts player. And yes, I would put it slightly Bretonnian favored. But there is a few key things the Bretonnian player needs to respect. And that is bring enough cavalry to deal with a triple Blood Knight. That is the most common thing. Don't over engage on I'm gonna win a car fight because some counts player like to go for air control, and if you don't bring enough archers also, you might struggle against a Mortis engine. But if you are putting your archers behind your infantry line at around 140-150 meters from the main engagement, they will be out of range of the Scabscas. Scabscas have 100 range, right? So if you're playing in that 40 to 50 meter range where the counts player can't kill your archers, most of the time the counts won't bring more than zombies or cheap skeleton. So infantry won't be a pressure, and your archers are free to do whatever they want. Grail Knight will lose to Blood Knight, not by a lot, but they will lose. And you can't resurrect model, so you need to be really focused on that part. But you have to remember also that you're gonna bring a Mortis to a car fight, and your Mortis is way faster than whatever Mortis they can bring. And your infantry is faster than most likely what the infantry will bring. So if you have a lot of archers, you can kite a count player, and if you have a lot of cav and Fae, you can beat them at mobility. You just really need to be focused on not sacrificing your archers, maintaining them out of range of a Scabscas, and making sure you are getting the better charges. If you misplay just slightly with a Grail Knight, they're gonna get demolished by a Blood Knight. And a Blood Knight are less easily punished than a Grail Knight because, well, like I said, model can be resurrected. But you, on the other hand, also have access to Dwellers, and Dwellers really helps you dominate those cav engagement. Especially more now that you have the ability to cancel a Dweller with the Arcane Conduit. Because you can put a Dweller down in a Blood Knight against Grail Knight fight, and if your opponent is not reacting and the Dweller goes off, then that's probably GG for that 1 or 2 Blood Knight, and he only has 3 at best. And if he's reacting and disengaging, just cancel it and get the attack in the rear penalty on him. So I would put it slightly Bretonnian favored.
You also have access to ranged units at all, which
Exactly.
vampire counts cannot contest.
It opens up to kite if your opponent really went all out on, I'm gonna bring zombies as infantry.
Helman Gorst and a bunch of Graveguard, and Bretonnia slowly walked away.
Exactly. While Lemon Ghost gets focused down by archers.
Ease. There it is. Cry is Free asked, why do people say Grail Knights are better than Blood Knights when they literally are not? You just answered that, but I wanted to acknowledge that that question did get answered. What's the next best question here? Well, Cry is Free, that question kind of got skipped because it was already answered. I'll ask your other one then. Please tell me, what is the best Bretonnian terror-causing duelist lord with an anti-large aura buff and bound wind spell? I need to know.
No, I think there is only one. I think that would be Alberic.
Oh, I thought it was Rapunzel.
Well, I hear you. I think you're quite the Rapunzel fan. But
Yeah.
I'm on Alberic's team, sadly enough.
That's
Yeah.
fair. So, that'll transition us into the Alberic questions. Most of them are just flaming the shit out of him, but one or two are
Yes.
good.
Poor Alberic.
I guess I'll start with me because I am the best. Is Rapunz or Alberic worse as a lord?
Well, Alberic is better than Rapunzel.
Damn it.
I mean, well, the main issue with Rapunzel is that she's not gonna cost a lot, sure, but she has too low of an HP pool to be a really good option. Maybe you could try to bring her in some matchup to flip it. The only matchup in which I could see Rapunzel being ever taken would be her on foot against Dwarf. And even still, that's not a great option. You have way better than that. Alberic, on the other hand, if you bring him on his mount and all abilities, all items taken away, he is really cheap. He's not gonna do a whole lot, but he is really cheap and he can at least bring terror and be fast, right? So there is that. Both will require a Damsel of Life, and Damsel of Life are never that great of a pick, just because they need Power Stone to really be able to spam out spells. They need a mount, because else they're gonna get sniped away really fast, because you can't hold your line and they are not really fast on foot. So Damsel of Life tends to be way more expensive than you would want her to be, for something that's just gonna grant you some healing.
I'm trying to look. Okay, at least they're cheaper than the Fae Enchantress. I was like, I swear to God, if Damsels of Life are about the same price as the Fae, I'm gonna be pissed.
No.
All right. Butcherbird asks, how do you feel about Alberic de Bordelot?
Well, he is my favorite lord in the game. I don't know why I have this fascination for him. I like him. I think he's really cool, and his faction in campaign has a really cool color scheme. But other than that, there is sadly no matchup where you would want him. Although I must say, I know some of the Chinese players, like high-level Chinese players, bring Alberic in one particular scenario. In two matchups. I've seen them bring Alberic consistently against Skaven and Greenskin. And they bring him with his mount and no abilities, no item, just to have a flying terror-causing monster against those two factions. But I think that's suboptimal still. But I need to point it out that some of the best Chinese players can do that and will sometimes do that in their big tournaments. So, at least there is that. You will sadly never see Rapunzel.
Well, agree to disagree.
Oh, I agree to disagree.
She's perfect.
She is perfect, she is. But the Fae is out of this world. Fae is beyond perfect.
Bob Trush asks, what do you hate about Alberic? Could it be his wind spell? And the fact that it takes 5 seconds to cast that spell is pretty egregious. I will say that.
Yes. Well, you just pointed out what triggers me the most about Alberic. The wind spell just takes too much time to wind up. It's a bit like the item of the Dark Elf mage, right? The Black Horror of Anzi something? Right? It's a really cool wind spell that would do a lot of damage if your opponent would not dodge it every time.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'm all up for a nerf on the damage, but a shorter cast time, if that's how CA wants to approach this. Because I think having a wind spell is really interesting against some faction. Not necessarily as an answer to just, you bring elite stuff, I'm just gonna wind spell it away. But to force some unit to move out. Let's say against Empire, for example, some Empire player will go for handguns, because handguns are really nice to kill out Fae. They will dish out a lot of damage really fast. Bullet time is really, really high, so it's harder to dodge than just regular arrows. So, if Alberic had a shorter cast time on his wind spell, he could threaten handguns and force them to be always on the move and not aiming. Because you could have that dynamic of, if they are aiming and firing, then they are staggered by their own animation and you can kill them with a wind spell. But right now, they can do a full volley and move out. So, not that much of a downside.
Huh. Yeah, the wind spell, like even against zombies, it doesn't do that much damage, and I don't think it does.
Well, it is purely AP, if I remember correctly, so that would be really good against some faction. But
I'll see how
the
good it
cast
is against
time makes
Graveguard.
it-
The cast time
time
is
makes
super
it,
long.
Yeah, it's unreasonable. And it also does a big leadership debuff, right? So against some factions, that would be really big. Like, I don't want to be the Black Orc unit that get hit by that, for example, or the Chaos Warrior unit.
Yeah,
But still, it's too long of a wind-up.
it does do 16 leadership, which is pretty good. Oh, yeah, against armored units, it does the exact same damages versus zombies, so...
Yes.
Okay. If its wind-up
And
was
the
so long, maybe it
leadership,
could be good.
leadership debuff combos with the terror effect from Alberic's Mount is quite something if you get a rear charge. And honestly, it might work against some players that are not aware of that or are not paying attention. But if you're seeing an Alberic, the first thing you need to check is, does he have his wind spell? If he does, that's the only thing you need to be worried about concerning Alberic. And yeah, it's too long to not be dodged.
Yeah.
If you are suffering from that wind spell, it's a micro mistake on your end. Not a good play on your opponents.
In the chat, Zypher's saying you didn't get any time to ask any questions. I think this chat's been up for like a week, my dude. The Discord channel asked these questions was there for a week. What were you doing? Sorry. If you want, you can ask a couple in chat, and if we haven't talked about them already, I will ask Saphir, but you had a week. Alright. I will quit derailing us. And a very serious question from Real Human Being. Why haven't CA made Alberic's Splishy Splash ability one-shot Lords and Heroes?
Oh well, I don't know. Maybe they drank too much Bordeaux wine, and they forgot to make him as good as he should be.
That'd be kind of funny. If you have a multi-entity model, it doesn't do anything, but if you're a single entity, it kills you. So it's the opposite of a burning head. It's a wind spell specifically to delete Lords and Heroes.
That would look really weird. But yeah.
Cyrus, who's in the chat, asked, are the Warhammer French similar to real French people? If they're not, which one do you prefer?
Oh wow.
Because you are not French, for anybody who might know.
Well,
right? Correct. You're in Brittany.
Well, exactly. Oh, we are going on spicy questions then. Alright, so yeah, I do live in Brittany, and Brittany is part of France. So I am both French and Breton. So when it comes to Bretonnia versus French, so they are pretty much the same, right? Just I think I would rather be a Bretonian than a French. Just because, yeah, French are not the most welcoming people in the world.
Yeah.
Sadly enough.
Yeah, as an American
But
with a ton of
us-
experience with France, I can agree. They suck. They're just...
Yeah, they suck. But come in Brittany, Bretons are really welcoming.
Yes, that was a joke, Chad. Don't get all mad.
Yeah. Obviously, we're teasing. It's all a joke.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not Brit. I think you can tell by my accent I'm not British. Definitely not.
I'm surprised no one asked you how many baguettes you feed your cavalry before each game, like the Zyphos Way Watchers thing.
Wait, what? Someone asked that to Zyphos.
They asked, how many baguettes do you feed your Way Watchers a day to make sure they perform at peak levels? And he said, 1 in the morning, 1 with lunch, and 1 before bed.
See, that's the issue. With my cavalry, I also have to feed the horse, right? And the steed really eats more baguettes than a knight, so... I'm like, I think, triple or quadruple what Zyphos provides.
Just feed them
And
peasants.
that's not cheap. Well, then I would have some issue with the League of Protection for Animals. Because if I'm feeding flesh to horses, I don't think they're gonna be really happy.
If it's good enough for rat ogres, it's good enough for horses. Alright.
Maybe that's the proper way to get some steed for chaos, because right now the horse are kind of a joke.
Speaking of horses, when would you use a build with no cavalry chasing rainbows?
Well,
Is there ever a
right.
time?
Well, you're losing on one of your key strengths as Bretonnia if you're not going for cavalry. So you would need to be, if you're going no cav, you're probably trying to cheese out with something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I could see one or two matchup where you would not pick cav, but that's really super risky. You need to be sure that your opponent can't just punish you with chariots or spam mobility. Chariot will still be something the opponent brings even when they know you're gonna have cav supremacy. But some faction will never, some faction will not go mobility against you if they expect a lot of cav, and it can work in those situations. Right, so a good example of a faction I can consider not bringing cav against would be dwarf. Just because, well, dwarf can sometimes overcommit to beating cav with like cannon and stuff like that. And if you're going, let's say, 5 foot squires, 5 battle pilgrim, 8 archers, something silly like that, and they have cannon, their cannon are not going to be cost effective. And that's even better if they overcommit to IAP unit to kill cav, because you're going to bring waves and waves of peasants with low armor. I guess it could also work against maybe coast, right? Not bring a lot of cav against coast, because coast will kind of play similar to, well, a gun build of coast will play similar to a defensive build from Dawi's around cannons, AP units, range AP units. And a Necrofex, for example, won't have any good targets if you're making waves and waves of infantry. But it's generally speaking a bad idea to not bring at least 2 to 3 cav units to protect your archers. Because if you're not bringing cav to win the battle, you have to have big win condition otherwise. And it's gonna be archers. Infantry is not reliable enough as Bretonnia for it to be your win condition. It can be a secondary one, but not the primary one.
Now, speaking of no cav, I had a friend. Well, okay, he's still my friend. I shouldn't say that. He's fine. He's very healthy. He's alive. Great start to that question. Who first introduced me to a build that is very silly, and I don't believe in it at all. But when he showed me it, it did technically work.
I know what you are talking about.
Rank 9 battle pilgrims and men-at-arms with polearms. Please, for the love of God, tell me this is bad.
That friend of yours is half Switzerland, half German, right? We are talking about the same dude.
Yes.
Yes, and he's definitely not dead, right?
He's definitely not dead. His internet's dead, but he's not.
Well, what can I tell you? I think it's bad, but the issue is it's so... Well, it's one of those things that's just so out of character for a faction that your opponent is never gonna expect it. And it's only gonna work if your opponent is so not expecting it that he creates a weakness to that. So it's basically the same way you would take a faction that's supposed to be good at something and pick the exact opposite and ditch all of your money into that, expecting it to work. It's not gonna work against most stuff, but it can work against someone that will never expect this and have no good answer to that.
All right. So you don't think rank 9 battle pilgrims is the way?
No. Definitely not. I would need to see replays of that and some matchup, like some specific matchup for it to be considered a viable option. But no. I don't think that's good.
I believe he called the build Savage Peasant Biggins, so how can you deny? It must be powerful.
Ah, yes, it did. Wait, isn't that what Ice Power called it? Or Bob? I'm not sure that's our common German Swiss friend that's called him that way. But even still, I don't think it's a good build. I think it's a decent build in maybe some matchups if you're really expecting an opponent that's known, like if you are known for cav play and bringing lots of cav, right?
Yeah.
A good example of that would be Showtime from ODM. That's an opponent I'm always gonna expect to go heavy on mobility because he loves his mobility. If you are facing a player that you know loves his mobility and he's bringing a build like that as Bretonnia, then yeah, that's so much out of character that it might actually work.
Savage peasant begins. If your peasants never break, you can never lose, I guess is the theory there.
Well, then bring a few Grail relique along the way while you're at it to make sure they never rout.
Do you see Zypher's question in chat for you, sir? About great weapons?
Yes.
Alright.
Yeah.
From the man himself. Zypher is asking you about a way to counter great weapons. What do you got for all the Cav players in the world? They're counting on you.
I do remember a question that that was touching on the same subject. So I'm gonna, I think, group them both, right?
Yep.
About the impact of great weapon against Bretonnia and Cav interaction with infantry. If I'm being totally honest, I think the community is overplaying the impact of that bug, of that interaction. Let's call it interaction. And yes, it's an issue, right? Great weapons are a big issue, and people know it's an issue on both sides, right? Bretonian players, when they are going against, we'll pick Chaos as an example because that's the faction that you'll most likely see a great weapon spam on. So, Chaos players going against Bretonnia know that spamming great weapon is a good answer to cavalry. Bretonian players going against Chaos know that great weapon is a good answer to their cav and that your opponent is expected to spam those. So the common logic would be don't go too hard on cavalry. But then it opens up to one more issue, and that issue is if you're not going too hard on cav, you need to go hard on archers to kill something. But going hard on archers against skirmish cav faction is usually not the best idea for Bretonnia. Alright, so I'm gonna maybe go on a bit of a rant regarding that, but I think that's important to state to present the build I'm about to talk after that. If you are facing oh sorry, I need to pour some water first.
That's fine. I'm gonna hit fast forward on watching peasants slap greenskins to the end of time.
Alright.
Because I do want to be able to map out this build you're telling me to take. But holy shit, this takes so long! Even against AI, Felix. Sorry, the guy's name is Felix. Felix, how do you ever play this without quitting? Alright.
Let's say Felix has a high tolerance to long games.
Yes. Okay, what's this magical build?
Wait, I need to go over the dynamic of we'll pick Chaos against Bretonnia.
Okay.
So if you're facing waves and waves of infantry coming your way, tailor-made to beat your cav if they are counter-charging, and skirmish cav along the way, what's gonna be the big issue is you're gonna have, so we're putting the base Fae build up against that, right? So 5 archers, 5 mob, cav, Fae 2 paladins and a few chaff. The big issue is gonna be the enemy's skirmish cav is faster than your cav. They're gonna be positioned behind your army, and your cav is faced with 2 bad situations. They either go hunting for skirmish cav, they are gonna get poked at, and they're gonna die. Well, slowly, but they're not gonna catch the enemy skirmish cav, because they are slower. And besides, you're likely to go heavy on quest ignite that don't bring any shields, so that's really not a good place for you to be. And if you are using your cav offensively, going for the infantry of your opponent, well, as we said, cav is gonna be trading badly on the charge, and you're also opening your rear to skirmish cav coming for your archers. And any unit of cavalry, whether it be a 300 gold cheap goblin cav, can kill a Bretonnian archers, just because they have such low leadership and really low HP pools, that as long as something has a charge bonus hits them in melee, they're gonna win. So, the solution I found against that is to go for the exact opposite of what your opponent brings. Of what your opponent expects you to bring. So I'm going for a 10 calf build against Chaos and Greenskin these days. And the idea behind that is I'm gonna take 5 peasant mob, like you're expecting it to see everywhere. But instead of 4 archers, I'm gonna bring 4 mounted human. I'm losing on volume of fire and on overall DPS.
Mounted yeoman archers, that is.
Exactly, mounted human archers. But I'm still having some range pressure. I'm having a fast answer to their skirmish cav because I have more range than most skirmish cav of Rush faction. Right, I have more range than Goblin on Spiders. I have more range than Marauders. So I can outtrade and push back the enemy skirmish away from my cav. And then I'm going all out on Fae Drain and Cavalry. The idea here is gonna be deny any engagement you can with your infantry. Use your peasant mob as getaway tickets. You're throwing them one at a time with the Fae double paladin to drain his enemy army as much as you can. And you're gonna be basically creating pockets of fight where the Fae drain is killing everything. Denying your enemy wide army by attacking his flank all the time. You don't care if your peasant mob get compromised. They are really cheap and they are here to win some time. So, picture this now. Let's say you've got 10 Chaos Infantry coming your way. And you've got enough mobility so that you can just attack one flank of that army, where only at best 3 infantry are gonna answer that. And the rest of the army is gonna be out of position. Then it doesn't matter if that one charge of infantry is trading well into one of your knights. You're gonna have 3 knights charging. And you're gonna have some healing to heal that back. Those infantry on the wings are gonna get crushed by the Fae Drain, plus the Paladin, plus some archers fire from your mounted human archers, and the overall number of cav you're gonna have. And that's really, really tough to face. Because wings fights are not the way you want to play with a really big infantry blob. Or with a really big infantry spy, I mean. So you can beat a Chaos Rush, a Greenskin Rush with that build. And it works again, it works also really well against Northgate.
Yeah, the flank overload mindset is just not something I'm adept at thinking of right away. Like, I always think of armies as lining up and slamming into each other, and then you try to like win the flanks and all that stuff, but it's really like just counterintuitive to certain mindsets that you don't have to square up. You can just take what fights you want and leave the other ones.
If you want a different description of the mindset change in build, when you're facing a Bretonnian player, you're expecting a typical medieval army, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chiefs of peasants, lords of archers, maybe trebs, and 80 cav. And an army like that is made to either hold its ground or come head-on towards you and fight you head-on. But this idea of a build to beat a rush, you're basically taking a medieval army, but playing it more akin to like a Mongolian army. You're gonna be denying engagement, playing heavy on the wings, and never fighting the enemy army head-on, because that's where you would lose. Just abuse your mobility advantage to make sure the enemy infantry can't get good engagements. Mm-hmm. And you have so many good tools as the Fae to beat infantry blobs and deny the opponent opportunity to blob as an answer. You have your Drain, you have your Chalice of Potion, you have your Dwellers Below. That's a lot of AoE. So your enemy can't use his infantry as a blob to counteract your blobs, but you're forcing blobs because you are faster than him anyway. Although I must say, this is a really micro-intense build because you're gonna have lots of cavalry to micro around, and you're gonna be punished really badly by big AoE spells like Traitorkin or Soul Stealers. So this kind of build needs to be practiced. You just don't bring it blindly.
Yeah. I think we can do a little bit of cleanup on the questions. If you could buff one unit on the roster, what would it be? That's from Loopy. I believe we answered that when I asked you how to make Bretonnia good without the Fae Enchantress. But
Well, on a side note then, there is one thing I would change regarding flyers for Bretonnia, and it's not a stat change. It's about the Pegasus Knight unit. I think they would be really good units in a lot of matchups if their charge was more reliable. Because it feels right now that when the Pegasus Knight model are trying to make contact on a charge against a ground unit, they're trying to make perfect contact. So the moment the Pegasus hits the ground, they want to be on the contact of the enemy unit at the same time, right? So most of the time, if you are charging an infantry unit or a cav unit, some of the knights are literally gonna land in the middle of that unit, but they don't have enough mass because they are regular cav to pull out of that without a new charge of an allied unit. So maybe if you change that interactions to make it so that when a Pegasus Knight charge, he lands 3 to 4 meters in front of the enemy unit or behind the enemy unit before them charging, right? Just to take a quick leap. Then the unit would be more reliable. Because as it is right now, if you are, let's say, trying to contest air against a count player, right? You're not bringing Grail Knights, you're going for Royal Pegasus Knights. Because they would be flying Grail Knights, so in theory they could get charged on Blood Knights with no consequences. If Blood Knights are moving around, half of the time they're gonna land in front of the Blood Knights, and they are the one going to get rear charged. And that's really not what you want with your elite cavalry. If it's not reliable enough to get rear charges, then it's really struggling. So yeah, maybe change the way the charge works for Pegasus Knights, and they would be a better unit, and that would be a nice buff to an underused unit.
now that you bring them up, there's actually 2 questions on them that I'm going to lump together because they're very similar. What is your opinion on Pegasus Knights, both variants, and Hippo Knights? Are they usable? If yes, where? That's from Pugnabone and AC Maiden. We have not touched on the Royal Pegasus Knights or the Hippogriff Knights, but you just said how you felt about the Pegasus Knights. And you also mentioned them earlier, saying they are good against Wood Elves and Dark Elves. Well, not Wood Elves as much, but you did mention them in Dark Elves.
Right. I'm gonna go quickly over them then.
Yes.
I think Royal Hippogriff Knights are sadly a bad unit, just because they are at a weird place where everything in your army is really cost effective, and that unit is not really, right? It's gonna bring Treya, it's gonna be a flying AP monster, so on paper it sounds really good for Bretonnia. But in battle they tend to underperform really well, underperform really much, a lot. And that's a big issue for them. They cost a lot and they are not gonna perform as good as you would want them to be. And Royal Pegasus Knights and Pegasus Knights are honestly pretty much the same unit. Just because they are both stat-wise really similar, just one is more aggressive than the other. But they are fighting the same targets in the air, and basic Pegasus Knights are already super good at that fight, right? If you want to be safe from air cheese, Pegasus Knights are good, right? Against Wood Elf, High Elf, Dark Elf, those factions that can go high on air, regular Pegasus Knights are good. Just don't overcommit on them. 1 or 2 max. And
But Royal Pegasus Knights have perfect vigor, which we figured out that even frickin' Lewin doesn't have.
that's true, so they're gonna sit on that hill waiting for the Green Knight and Lewin to come. But when it comes to actual fighting, they're gonna be the most clunky unit, getting rear charge while they are charging. So you would want Pegasus Knights, and I mean the base unit, when you need to control the air, when you can't give up air against your opponent. So you can get away with giving up air against counts, but I would advise picking them against. If you want to use them, the best matchups are a lizard to make sure Terradon can't get just access to your archers easily. Coast to deny any gunbat play because they're gonna slaughter and catch up to gunbats really fast. And Elvish Faction if you are afraid your opponent might go for an air cheese, like Oak-Ride cheese, or Spam of Dragon, or I don't know what kind of cheese Elf can. I like to play in those matchups. But if you're afraid of air cheese, Pegasus Knights can be a good answer. Just don't bring them in hope of having a mobile cav unit. They're gonna perform well. They can perform similar to Knights of the Realm, but they are more costly and they are slightly weaker when it comes to paying back, I mean.
Yeah. The Royal Pegasus Knights also do magic damage, so if there's ever a flying ethereal unit, boom.
Yeah, that's a good spot for them, but I don't think we'll see that soon.
Currently, there's not.
Can I take a quick 5-minute break?
Yup. I'll fill time.
I'll be right back.
Neckbet and Killing Smalls. If Cav get fixed, will Bret be OP? I can answer that for you. Definitely, because they're already a very high tier faction, and the Cav bug exists. Also, as Saphir was talking about, I'm guessing that in his opinion, if the Cav bug, he doesn't think it's the biggest deal right now, like big ol' asterisk around that. I imagine that if it was fixed, they would only get better. Chosen One, I will wait for that question until he gets back. Cryos free. Is Bretonnia still nice into Wood Elves, or those disgusting 20 stacks are still too much to handle? How would you handle 8 Spearmen and 5 Dryads? He talked about that a bit in the matchup discussion with Wood Elves. It's mostly just Fae Blob, spells, and a shit ton of archers. Is Bretonnia still a counter against High Elves with the Cav bug? According asked by Phoenix King. According to him, yes. Great. Great. There was a question from somebody that I forget if I asked or not, but I definitely deleted it. About, you asked Saphir to Fae blob me for this entire interview, and I said no. Come here, kitty. Don't just move butt. Okay.
I'm back.
Hey. I answered some questions you already answered, and I just acknowledged that people asked them. But I saved one for you. This is not a question of the meta, it's just a question of your preference. Which is worse, Cav being bugged and almost no one playing Bret, or having no Cav bugs, so you have to watch people abuse Bret? Because it's OP AF again. Chosen One.
Yeah, I remember that one. Well, I think Bretonnia is in a fine situation right now. And I think Cav bug is people are overestimating the impact it has on the game. Well, for Bretonnia at least. Some other factions are suffering more from the Cav issues than Bretonnia. And it may sound a bit weird, because Bretonnia is the Cav faction, right? The first faction people are going to think of when they are thinking of Cav nerfs or Cav buffs. But I think Bretonnia right now is a solid B, if not A tier faction. And to me, that's a balanced faction. If you are sitting in that tier where people can consider you a decent first pick, right? People are thinking about you as a first pick, but they are not instantly thinking you are the best first pick. I think your faction is pretty much balanced. I think Bretonnia right now is balanced thanks to the cav issues. And without the cav issues, they would be S plus tier. And that's not something you want to see. Because S tier faction with a really fast mortis that you can't catch and a lot of mobility plus some really cheap infantry is not a fun faction to play against. At least right now people know how to counter cavalry and they have good answer against it. Other than just having to bring single entities, spell, or cav of their own, which their cav will probably lose to Bretonnia.
Fair. We'll answer a couple silly questions and then get back into the deep meta stuff. Oh, where's the mounted yeoman one? That one was silly. Well, Neckbet asks, what is the deal with airline food?
I have no idea, man.
All right.
I have literally no idea. Is it because it's better than it's supposed to be, or just worse than it's supposed to be?
It's apparently terrible, according to Jerry Seinfeld, but I don't know. Whenever I fly on a plane, they just give me a little cookie, and it's a good cookie. I like my cookie.
I guess it depends on the time of your flight and which company you're flying in, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's an issue in the place you live in, Jeremy, not where I live in.
Huh? What is... Well... No, not that one yet. Charix asks, what do you think about the melee defense change from 5 to 6 for the Blessed Field Trebuchets?
Well, what's the difference between blessed and not blessed? Ones are praying the fair bit more than the others, right? And what does that show? That you are not weaker if you are praying the fae. You are just stronger. So it goes back to the previous question. Yes, Fae lying in pond is a stable source of government. You are not weaker if you are praying the fae, so yes, it's a buff and it's nice. It didn't make any sense that they had one less melee defense.
Real Human Being asks, when using mounted yeoman archers, should they deliberately keep all of their ammunition safe so they're heavier on the charge?
No, but goddamn, be worried if you bring them. Their balance of power value really drops on their last few volleys, like a crazy lot.
Yeah.
Don't get army losses by that. It's kind of silly.
Why is Real Human Being the best Bretonnian player ever? From Real Human Being. He does. For context, this person doesn't have the game.
Oh. I didn't knew that.
No, they don't have the game. They just watch a lot of the content for some reason.
Oh well. Maybe it's that all that inner potential never exploited makes that person the best Bretonnian player ever to touch the game.
Yes. And then the last meme question before I get to something a little more substantial is, how many peasants can Torix the Brass Bull kill from Loopy? And that's why, for anybody curious, you are watching 40 peasant mobs fight Torix, and he's losing.
Yeah, well... yes, I don't know. I have no word from what I'm seeing on stream right now.
He's desperately trying to kill these peasants.
God damn.
He's killed 200.
Oh god. 200 is not that... I think he's just gonna rout away because he's gonna get too tired and the peasants are insulting him.
His leadership is frickin' like
he's gonna waver. He just understood that they are worthless than Skaven.
Yes, what is... Damn it. Oh, it's an accordion. His leadership bar is an accordion right now. Just like, full empty. Full empty. I'm getting so nervous. Alright. To transition from serious to meme, I will ask you a serious meme question. From Pugnabone and Hammond, how would you make the Grail relique viable? Actually, like a weird... Oh my fucking god, he almost got army lost. A weird actual quick story from me. When I first entered the competitive scene, the meta wasn't fully set on what Bretonnia should be yet. And I actually was super used to seeing Grail reliques. Usually I'd see one or two with a bunch of peasant mobs, because at the time it was like, oh, you can turn this 100 gold unit into ITP and give it more leadership and all that stuff. So it was funny that, like, at the start of the scene, I was used to seeing them all the time, and now that I think about it, I'm like, huh, that hasn't been meta for like a year and a half.
Yeah. Well, like, about that unit, Grail Relique, I think it's a kind of trap unit, because on paper you'd look at it and you would think, alright, so that's a unit that's gonna help my front line remain in battle longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that sounds nice for Bretonnia. I don't have to worry about my front line winning or wavering too early. But in the end, as Bretonnia, it's not that much of an issue if you are playing Bretonnia well. I mean, if you are beginning on Bretonnia, it's gonna be really annoying for you to micro all of that stuff when your infantry is breaking. But when you get more experience with the faction, you know your infantry is gonna break at one point. Having that unit is just gonna create one pocket that's gonna hold for a bit more than the rest, but your archers are gonna still get compromised by the other point of the battlefield, where the infantry is pushing through. So you're gonna have to fall back anyway. And peasant mob, if they are just dying on the first fight, they are not fully utilizing their potential. One of the best things about peasant mob is that they are holding, then when they break, they are running really fast in all kind of direction. And you've got cav, you've got mobility advantage most likely, and you're already gonna be falling back with your archers. So your opponent is not gonna waste time chasing them around, so they're gonna come back. They're gonna still be effective, gonna be annoying later in the game. And in that sense, you don't need them to hold as long as a Grail Relique would. And they are not cheap unit, Grail Relique that is. So on defensive build, they are not that interesting. That's my opinion, right? The unit they would pair well with would be Menatarm with Polearm, because that's the only infantry of Bretonnia that could really use the ITP plus staying in the line longer. But other than that, the rest of the chaff, you don't need them to route, obviously, but you're going to be used to having them routing and coming back, and you can use them that way.
Mm-hmm.
And the battle pilgrims are not that well matched with Grail Relique. They already kind of have high leadership and ITP. A good use for a Grail Relique, though, there is one matchup in which you can see them, and that's against Tomb Kings. Just to give ITP to Fae and Paladin for a foot blob. And have one more of those single entities that's really annoying.
Yeah. Did you know, as I was pulling this up to accent what you're saying with a little bit of a demonstration, did you know the Grail Relique has the highest leadership of anything that's not unbreakable on this roster? It has higher than any Lord.
Wait, really?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It has 85, which is already higher than Lewin base, and Lewin's the highest Lord I could see. But it gives itself that 12 leadership aura. So it gets up to like 100 and some.
Yeah.
So
it's a unit that's never gonna route.
Yeah, that's just kind of funny.
It has really low HP, and it's gonna die super fast to anything that focuses it.
Oh boy, yeah. It only has 2,500-ish. Alright. But, yeah. So, not the best unit, but can be useful in Tomb King's matchup, which takes us to a question asked by Complex Slayer. How does the Bretonnia versus Tomb King matchup play out for you? You mentioned at the start that it would be one of the better ones for Bretonnia, potentially your fourth favorite pick.
Yes.
So, you must think it's good for you. How does it go?
It is. One of the reasons for that is Tomb King is a slowish faction. It's not going to be a faction that's going to outmaneuver you.
Yeah.
And, well, unless they go full on skirmish cav, chariots, and all of that. But Fae is really annoying for Tomb King to deal. It's a unit you need to overcompensate for, or else it's gonna just kill your army. And I feel like in this matchup, Tomb King against Bretonnia plays up pretty similar to how Skaven Bretonnia plays up, but just Tomb Kings are the worst faction at it. right? They're either gonna try to rush you or to box, but they're gonna do it less effectively than Skaven would. And when fighting against Tomb King, as Bretonnia, you can either go all out on archers and just drown them in arrows with Scaff to protect your archers, and Tomb Kings can't do much against that. Or you can go for a really big rush, and both can be played with Foot Fae Blob, which is super hard to deal with. So Foot Fae Blob in that build is Fae on foot, Gotrek with no abilities, Paladin with Guardian, and a Grail relique. That's the usual Foot Fae Blob you would see. And that thing, piled up with a few Peasant Mob, a few Battle Pilgrim, to create a front line before the archers, is really annoying for Tomb King to deal with, because they don't have that many good options to kill foot heroes. And that is, except for the Tomb Scorpions, but the Tomb Scorpions will get slaughtered by Paladin and Gotrek. So that Foot Fae Blob can, against the box, rush into the box and kill everything, and the rest of the Bretonnian army just has to provide support for the Mortis to kill everything.
Mortis engine.
Mortis engine. So it's really hard for Tomb King to play against that. Some Tomb King player likes to go heavy on chariots, but that's also one of the matchups where Questing Knight are really MVPs. Thanks to the ITB, they are not gonna route to a big blob of Tomb King monsters. The Ushapti Great Bows will deal a lot of damage to your cavalry, whether you have shields or not. So that's one of the reasons why Knights of the Realm aren't the greatest pick here. They can be good, but they are not as good as Tomb King would be. And also, all of the annoying unit for your Fae Blob played by the Tomb Kings are high armor targets, and Questing Knight will deal with all of them. So, bring a Foot Blob, some decent amount of chaff, but more offensive one, right? A few Battle Pilgrims, a few Peasant Mobs, some archers, and 4 to 5 cav playing mostly on the defensive, unless you see an opening in the enemy formation. And that's something Tomb King will struggle a lot to beat, because they need to be enough on both Shaptis, Spirit Leech, and all that kind of stuff to kill your cav, or else the cav will win the entire battle. They also need to have enough artillery or chariots to kill your archers without dying to the, well, Fae Blob coming for the artillery, or cavalry protecting the archers. And on top of all of that, they have that hero blob that's not dying and grinding away all of their infantry.
Yeah. Well, Questing Knights absolutely slaughtered those Tomb King's chariots.
Oh yeah.
That was nice.
They
Even getting
hold
flanked
this
by a Tomb King Lord, they still won it pretty hard.
They rule the matchup.
Good for you, Questing Knights. Good for you.
Yeah.
Alright. I like this question from Killing Smalls. It was asked a little late, so you didn't have the chance to veto it. So if you don't want to answer it, just say pass, and we'll know that you don't like Killing Smalls. Killing Smalls says, I noticed that the question which matchups are easiest, hardest is always in, but I would like to know which matchups are the most important to practice.
Well, most important to practice.
Yeah.
It depends on how much you want to play Bretonnia. Like, I would advise anyone picking a faction, and that's more general advice and really made for Bretonnia. But if you want to learn a faction and use that faction in tournament, start by learning your counter picks. The faction you are counter picking with. Sorry. So, for example, as Bretonnia, start by learning the Elvish faction matchup, not Dwarf or Lizardman. Don't put your head against the wall and try to break the Dwarven matchup. No, don't lose your time doing that. At first, you're gonna be using the faction as a counter pick only. So learn the matchup where you will use that faction as a counter pick. Then work your way slowly towards the unfavored one. So if we're going for Bretonnia, start with Elvish faction. Once you figure out how to play against Elf, try Tomb King, Norska, Empire. And once you've done already those 6 factions, you are pretty well set in playing Bretonnia in half of the game. The rest, you'll experience for yourself if you want to practice first coast or counts, or if you wanna really consider Bretonnia as the first pick, then you need to practice Greenskin, Skaven, Chaos, because those factions are gonna be the usual counter pick.
Got it. All right. We still have a page and a quarter of questions left, and for you, it is 10 p.m. So we're going to do some rapid fire ones. You ready?
Shoot.
Best matchup for the Green Knight from AC Maiden, and how can the Green Knight be made even better for draw kiting from Zero?
Draw kiting, I have no idea, but best matchup it's Pirates. Because Pirates don't have that many good anti-Green Knight tools. They don't have enough magic damage unit. And Green Knight will hunt down Gunnery Whites and slaughter them. Whereas
Gotcha.
Gunnery White will slaughter your archers.
How does Bretonnia deal with a full Clan Rat build, and why is it Fae Enchantress? That's really
Answer is in the question. Fae Enchantress will kill any infantry issue you're facing if you provide enough support for her to do that.
There was one time Killing Smalls was told that Beastmen should ban Bretonnia. Do you agree with that?
Not at all.
Okay.
Especially right now.
What is your favorite knight unit? This is from me. It's not the best knight unit, just your aesthetic or favorite in any way.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it's the same for our question. Aesthetic-wise, it's a questing knight. Having knights with no helmet is really cool, I think.
They have no helmet.
No. They are not... not all of them have helmets. And they're also carrying big-ass swords into the battle, which is pretty dope.
What is your favorite and most hated Bret matchup? This is from Loopy, and they do not mean favorite or disfavored. They meant your favorite to play, fun-wise.
Right. Fun-wise, Fun-wise, it's probably Chaos. I've practiced it a lot lately, and I'm starting to like it. And the one I hate the most, well, it would be Beastman right now, but it's mostly because it feels like I'm mostly fighting against game issues and fighting against my opponent.
As a fan, I can still say Vampire Counts is by far my favorite to watch.
Yeah, well, it's a fun one to play as well.
Yeah, that was great. That's a bigger one. This one's really interesting. So this is not rapid fire, though we did just knock out like 4 or 5 questions. Anticity asked this: is there a melee cav from a different faction that you would think would be useful to have on the Bretonnian roster? Is there any cav you want? What is it?
Yes. I think there is a spot for a cav unit, and that would be Horned Ones. Just because they have similar speed to the rest of the Bretonnian cav, so they would not lag behind in any build. And they fulfill that spot of having another AP option for Bretonnia. Like a cav that can stick in melee with not needing to cycle charge, and they don't die to Spirit Leeches, which is a big issue in some matchups, right?
Yeah.
So yes, Horned Ones would be my answer.
That actually takes me to this one from Blood Penguin very nicely. Should Bretonnia get dismounted knights and monstrous cav? Now, the monstrous cav thing is kind of Horned Ones, so it sounds like you think maybe yes, but what about the dismounted knights?
So I don't think they should get dismounted knights. Dismounted knights would open up to more defensive play and would open up to infantry focus build, and that's not the spirit of the faction. I think right now the faction plays pretty much as they should be in lore, and going for infantry focus build would not be the Bretonnian way of playing. So I think it would be out of character for the faction to have dismounted good knight unit. I mean, like we're talking about elite infantry, right? Something akin to great swords or black orcs, like those kind of unit.
Yeah.
That would not be a good unit in Bretonnian roster.
What matchup is best for Grail Guardians? AC Maiden.
Counts. You bring one of them and you bring it around the Fae. And that's making... This way you're making sure the Fae can stick in Cav fights way longer than she would accompanying regular Grail Knights.
All right. Jeremy says, I am bad at Bret. How do I get better?
Alright. If you want to improve on Bretonnia, my advice would be go for the most standard Bretonnia build and playstyle you can think of. Like the one we mentioned a dozen times before. Fae, Double Paladin, and all of that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And this is gonna help you because, like I said, you're gonna be playing pretty much the same way in a lot of matchup. So depending on how many opponents you have available to practice, you can practice this build in quick battle without needing to adapt too much to your opponent. So you'll improve on that build knowledge and experience quickly. And you should always, when playing Bretonnia, try to think of the best way you can utilize your cavalry. And by that I mean, is it the best time to try to go for a cycle charge through your own infantry? Should you try to go for a flank overload because the enemy is weak to that? Or is it time for your cavalry to play more defensively and protect range units? If you have spare time when playing Bretonnia, think more about what your cavalry can do. Usually one of your cav needs to be disengaged from a fight to cycle charge, or one of your cav can move to another location to be more effective. Besides, if you start to feel like you are getting really good at cav micro and you are using control group, I would advise splitting your cav into more control group, right? So like at first maybe, okay, so control group wise, the way I usually play is I've got my lord on 1 and my single entities on 2, right? My double paladin.
Uh-huh.
And my cav is like 3 to 5. And depending on the number of cav, it might go higher than that. And if you're starting on Bretonnia, maybe you'll group your cavalry in 1 or 2 groups, right? But the more confident you get, I would advise splitting them into more groups because you will tend to utilize their charge more and not having them bunched up around each other and be open for spells. Maybe not getting optimized charges. So,
yeah. Bretonnia are quite hard to learn. I've tried many times, and every time I give up.
yeah.
But I think it's also just like a play style type thing, and maybe I'm not meant to use cav and be interesting.
Maybe it's a playstyle, or maybe you try to go for the wrong matchup at first. I would really advise, if you want to play Bretonnia, if you want to pick up the faction, if you need Bretonnia to play against a rush faction, learn it first against Norska, because it's the easiest rush faction to beat. And I don't mean that as, you're going to pick up bad habits, or it's going to give you a wrong sense of security because you're going to beat Cav, because you're going to beat rush faction.
Mm.
The important is not the faction you're playing against and how good are you at playing against that faction. It's how good are you at playing your build. And Norska, you'll play your build pretty similar to how you will play it against Greenskin and Chaos. And just you're gonna have more time and you're gonna be a bit more free to try out how to play the matchup. Norska will punish you less at first. And you will correct that by playing lots and lots and lots.
Reps equals gains.
Yep.
Way, XMT Way, I believe, asks, can Bretonnia reliably kill SEMs without peasant archers, Lewin, or paladins? If yes, how?
It's really hard. If you are taking out paladins, archers, and Lewin, it's really hard.
I read that question and I'm like, that's kind of stacking the deck, isn't it?
Yeah, a bit. Well, alright. I mean, Cav is the obvious answer. You can't rely on your polearms, for example, or on the regiments of rundown foot squire to kill large targets, because they have just too low mass to force large targets to remain in action, against them, right? They're going to disengage because they are in a bad fight.
Mm-hmm.
But Alright. If you are really struggling against big monsters, more times than not, you are either not helping your paladin in the fight, because paladin can be taken out fast if they are not protected or if they are on their own, or you are just taking fights at the wrong timing. One of the best tools to kill, let's say, a big armored target, like a Stegadon, right? Let's take a Stegadon that just bursts through your line of infantry. You're probably gonna kill it faster with a questing knight than with your paladin.
Got it.
Because questing knights are that big armor dealing, AP dealing target, dealing units with ITP. So your best option against big monsters is Grail Knights and questing knight, but most times than not, questing knight will do the same job as Grail Knight, but against armored targets and against unarmored targets, your paladins are really shining in those situations, and bowmen are shining as well. So sure, if you are taking out paladins and bowmen, yeah, Bretonnia will struggle a lot against single entities.
Yes. How cost effective is each knight unit and yeoman from Stormrunner?
And yeoman, so mounted yeoman, not the archer one, right?
Yeah, just basically every cav unit cost effective wise.
I think.
Do you want to go through each and every single one, or do you just want to list like top 2 and bottom 2?
I'll rapid fire it. It's then. Alright, the 3 best knight units are Knights of the Leon Heart, Regiments of Radan, Knights of the Realm. They are basically a small Grail Knight, Questing Knight, and Knights of the Realm. Those are top 3. The Regiments of Radan, Questing Knight is the best one-on-one cav in the game. They'll beat any cav, including Mor's Greyfight, but that's not too hard, is it? And Grail Knights, Grail Guardian, Knights Errant are all decent cav. They are good cav, but they are not as cost effective as the other 3 I mentioned before. And regarding mounted yeomen, they sit at this weird space where they are basically a hound unit in a faction that doesn't need hound. And when fighting hounds, they will beat hounds, except for the undead ones. Because in those fights, what will happen is that they will be damaging the hound unit more than the hound will be damaging them back, but the hound won't rout. And when both units will hit approximately at the same time the 10 to 15% HP mark, the mounted yeomen will rout, even though they are winning the fight, and they will be hunted down by the dozen of hounds left.
Mm-hmm. There was a question, can we make mounted yeoman good/usable in the actual patch? And then why did you answer no from Popra? And I feel like you just kind of touched on that. They're a hound unit on a roster that doesn't need them.
Yeah, and the mounted yeomen with arcs, like with bows, are a good unit. They are just underused, and they are not a jack of all trade unit, right? They are not the greenskin skirmish cav, they are not the marauder javelin cav, but they remain a 360 cav unit that's really good at zoning other skirmish unit.
Mm-hmm. From Chasing Rainbows, how do you tell which knights do what when fighting them?
Oh yeah.
All the cav icons look the same from where I view it, and the models look the same. Okay, so if you're fighting against Bretonnia, how do you tell the knights apart?
If I'm being honest, I'm not fighting against Bretonnia that much, but when I'm playing against Bretonnia, if my opponent brings more than 4 to 5 cav, I can't tell the difference during the battle because it's too chaotic.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm playing as Bretonnia, I usually make sure let's say I have 3 Knights of the Realm and 3 Questing Knight. Although the icons are slightly different, it's not noticeable enough for you to look at icon and know which unit is which. So you need to be aware of the fight you are picking and why you are sending that unit in. Right? Let's say you are doing a flank overload and the first enemy infantry unit coming your way is an armored one. that's where I will send my questing knight, while my Knights of the Realm are overflanking. Let's say it's a low armored one, then I can send a Knight of the Realm in, and I'll have to remember, it's a memory game. You have to remember which unit are you sending where, and why are you doing it. So, if you are struggling a lot, maybe try to pair them. Like if you've got 3 questing, 3 realm, try to make sure 1 realm and 1 questing are always tag teaming alone, so to provide assist, and this way you will never be in a situation where a heavily armored target is flanking you and you've mistakenly put all of your questing knight on the other flank.
Mm-hmm.
But when fighting, it's not gonna be noticeable by icon, so you have to make an extra effort to memorize where you are sending each cav and why you are sending there. This way it's usually the best way to do that.
Chosen One asks a question I fundamentally disagree with, but I will ask it because it's my job. Do you think the reason for the low number of Bret mains is that so few playstyles are viable right now? That's from Chosen One. I don't know what you're talking about. I see Bret mains everywhere.
Oh, well, tell me where they are, because I don't see anyone playing Bret these days. Have you seen the last faction war? It was pretty sad.
That's true, but I know Ulrich Rahl from RTK loves Bretonnia.
Yes, but you are in the clan with the most Bretonian players.
Oh, okay. Well, that would explain.
You have Prussian Prince, Smalls, and Ulrich.
And
That's
Platypus.
like
Platypus hasn't played in a long time, but she used to play.
Oh, and Kemba as well.
Kemba
That's
plays.
like 90% of the Bretonian player base.
Yeah, it's really weird that the Round Table Knights keep attracting all these goddamn Bretonian players.
Yeah, is it? Eh? But no. Okay, so yes, I would agree that one of the reasons why Bretonnia is not as liked as it used to be right now is because it's a really predictable faction in a meta that on paper does not suit them. I also think it's a faction tougher to learn, and the community right now is mostly newcomers that came this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're doing a tournament, okay, let's look at the faction war that happened last weekend.
Yeah,
if you are looking at all the name, a lot of those names are either newcomers or people that started playing a few months ago or came back a few months ago. They are not veterans, right? So the meta on the last few months has influenced a lot the most played faction, right? There's a lot of stuff that go on in that, in why some factions are more popular than others, right? Dwarves are always going to be quote unquote a popular faction just because they are they are a bit extreme in their own way, like in their own Discord with all of that stuff. But I don't wanna risk the wrath of the dwarven community, so I won't go too deep into dwarves. But Bretonnia suffers from the fact that it hasn't been a top tier faction for a while. So the people that come in the game right now are kind of hitting a wall when they're trying to practice Bretonnia, because it's not the easiest faction to pick right now and not the easiest faction to learn. And if you want to play competitively right now, I would agree that it's not the easiest faction to start with. And a lot of players will go for the S plus faction, or the all-time favorite one, or the one with the most varied playstyle. Bretonnia doesn't offer any of that, sadly.
Or you're a Chad and you pick your favorite faction aesthetically and then learn them no matter what the meta is.
Yes, exactly.
Dude,
that's the way I'll do it.
Like, okay, obviously I'm biased because that's literally what I did, but I love people that do that, like Bob Tresh. Even though Lizards have been good for a long time, even if they were bad, he would play Lizardmen all day, and it's just like, stick to your guns. I love it.
Man, I played Bretonnia competitively in Warhammer 1 when we had 11 units on our roster, Lord included. Just because the aesthetic and the lore of the faction. I can relate to that opinion.
Yes. I respect the mains. Alright. How do we get back to that? Okay. We can knock out a few kind of joking ones. The Phoenix King asks, how do you think about Lewin feels about being a cheap, fake King Arthur?
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
I don't think he knows he's a cheap, fake King Arthur.
Yeah, no, he's not aware.
Yeah.
He's just not aware.
So,
Doesn't know King Arthur is He is Lord of Bretonnia, god damn it. Roy of Bretonnia. He doesn't care about some lowly English king or anything.
Flying Taco and Jeremy have asked, what model would you like to see to get a visual update, and what is the current best Bretonian model in the game, visually?
Best model visually, I think, would be the Pegasus Knights, right? They are just, well, it's just such a cool unit, right? A Pegasus with a knight on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I need a visual update on the Grail Knight. I think right now they are not made. Well, let's say they are not the most unique looking for what they're supposed to be.
I would
They
agree.
feel like just upgraded Knights of the Realm. Where I really like the barding aspect of the Knights unit in Bretonnia, right? I think the barding is really well made for the Knights unit. But the Grail Knights just feel like, yeah, they are Knights of the Realm with fancier helmet, which have been given magic lenses. They don't reflect the experience and all the knights than they should be.
Yeah.
So maybe like a more varied bardings or different helmets, right? It feels like they made 3 different helmet model and then copied it and just changed the thing on top of it.
I would agree now that I'm looking at them. Also, their colors aren't very inspiring for being Grail Knights. They just look
Yes,
like,
exactly. The horse barding should be way more decorated.
if you look at like Wood Elf models compared to Bretonnian models, it's like, all right, they need to Wood Elfify the Grail Knights,
Yeah.
like give them a bunch of swirling patterns and shit.
Yes.
What is the most niche unit on the roster? This is from Real Human Being. Niche
The
as
most
in
niche one.
yeah, niche as in good in a very specific situation, but terrible outside of it.
Oh, the most niche one. I think the Green Knight. The Green Knight can be really, really good in some matchup and be like a game-changing unit, like against Coast. If the Coast players really doesn't have any magic damage, because they usually don't, Green Knight is gonna be unkillable. I've played the matchup a lot against Anticity where he brings either a gun build or a rush build. And he used to go Silostra without Spiteful Shot, right? And Green Knight could just run into the Crab Rush and not die, just eating Gunnery White, and you need Gunnery White to kill the archers. So Green Knight is super good in that situation. But the moment your opponent starts to bring magic missiles, it's the most useless unit in the roster. So it's probably the nichest pick.
He's very niche. Is there anything at all interesting or exciting about Bretonnia from F&G?
Yes. Yes, it's a faction that's gonna train you at Carve Micro and at Micro overall. It's a really good faction to practice for experienced player mostly. Like I really think it's a really good faction to practice the game overall and not just go too specifically into a faction, right?
Yeah.
If you are practicing the game by only playing Chaos, you will be an expert at charge build and rush build. If you are playing too much Waywatch Kite, you will be an expert at kiting. Too much Dwarf, you will be an expert at boxing. Bretonnia can teach you kite, box, and rush at the same time. You can kite with Peasant Bowman, you can rush with Pilgrim, you can hold your position with Treads. And on top of that, you will practice Carve Micro. So yeah, Bretonnia is an exciting faction to play.
I would agree, even though I'm bad at them. Well, okay. The faction's fun. The way it's currently played can be stale in certain matchups, but like that's not the faction in general's fault. There's a question. I'm going to go to the bathroom, but I'm going to do my best to smile and nod while I'm in there, and you're going to tell the stream the answer to this. Was Bretonnia good before the poison missile changes? I don't ever really notice Pox arrows suddenly carrying melee fights for Cav. That is from XMT Way. I'll be right back.
So Well, Poison Changes was... Well, Cav was already dominating beforehand. Each Bretonnian Cav in a vacuum was trading evenly or upwards against other Cav faction for the same price. What the Poison Changes really made is that Cav was already winning fights, right? But now they were winning it while taking less damage and while impacting the battlefield way more afterwards, right? And it's not something you traded value for. It's not like to get that advantage, you lost something else. It's just something you gained for free that helped you on an area in which you were already strong, car fights. So, yes, Bretonnia was already good before Poison Changes. But I think Poison Changes made Bretonnia better than they should have been.
That was a literally perfect answer from start to finish.
Oh, wow.
I was here the whole time. Are there any other meme ones to get out of the way? We are in the final stretch here. We're close. Which would you rather fight? A Gorgon, a War Sphinx, a Hydra, or a Feral Carnosaur? That's from Jeremy, and I'm assuming he's talking to you, Saphir, not as a roster. Like, you're literally running into this.
So
you are Saphir, the Grail Knight. What will you defeat?
So I have choice between a Gorgon, an Hydra, and a Carnosaur, right?
And a War Sphinx, but yes.
And a War Sphinx. Huh. Well, personally, as a Grail Knight, right? Because I'm an IRL Grail Knight.
Of course you are.
I would go for the Carnosaur because that's the toughest opponent and the most badass one, or maybe the Hydra. As a Bretonnian peasant that I can sometimes be, I probably go for the War Sphinx because I don't think the War Sphinx can notice me if I hide pretty well.
That's true.
So, but as a Bretonnian Knight, yeah, Carnosaur or Hydra.
If I can distract the conversation, I said we're almost done, and then I'm going to distract us. The Grail Knights having 45 models is a bunch of horse shit. All right, because if you've read the Bretonnian books, and I have a couple, like, it's weird to say this, but Grail Knights should be a hero unit, not
exactly.
Yeah,
that's something I wanted to say. I think a Grail Knight hero would make much more sense than a Paladin one.
Yeah, or you could have both, and the Paladin could be like your cheap version.
Yeah, you could have like an elite hero, which is the Grail Knight.
Yeah, because
and he would be an anti-large specialist better than the Paladin.
Yeah, because in the books, like, literally a Grail Knight kills a giant, and, like, a Chaos Giant. He kills one, and it was tough, but he, like, did it, and now I have 45 of them running around, and I'm supposed to just believe that they trade okay against horned ones. And I'm like, these... What?
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
So,
also, I'm open for something that would be really cool for Bretonnia, because I remember a question, and maybe I'm going ahead of the question here, but I remember someone asking for a unit for Bretonnian army. I think one of the things CA really hasn't touched upon and would be really cool. I don't know if it would be interesting, like competitive side, but do regiments of renown for Paladin, and you make hero named Paladin. Like, I want to see Bohemond, the Slayer of Baston, like as a regiments of renown Paladin. And stuff like that would be a really cool way to include more characters by not making them legendary lords.
Yeah, that is it is a question from me, Neckbet, and Zyphos, so it was popular. What would you add to the roster or in a DLC? Is the roster complete? And are there any new mechanics you want for the roster? So, named heroes.
Yeah, named heroes would be cool. DLC-wise, I'm gonna branch from the question, is the roster complete? Generally speaking, I think the roster is complete. The idea of Bretonnia is translated well into the game, and their playstyle is here. They are the factions they're supposed to be. And if you are giving them units that doesn't fit that identity, you're just gonna make a weird gimmicky faction, and that's not gonna be really interesting to see. So, if you want to give new units to Bretonnia, try to expand on the missile infantry. I'm thinking of a huntsman unit, like I mentioned a bit before. That would be interesting because Bretonnia is almost as much a faction of range as a faction of cav, right? It's a faction of cav, but their second strength is range. So if you are giving them other range option, which would remain in their medieval France aesthetic, you would not lose the identity of the faction, and you would give them some interesting way of playing some matchups, right? So range unit, I don't think Bretonnia needs more infantry. They've already got the infantry they need, right?
Mm-hmm.
In which scenario will you pick any elite infantry over 100 gold peasant mobs that can make sure your cav plays properly and has the impact they needed? Because if you are investing more in infantry, you are losing in cav money, and you want all of your money on cav if possible. So archers.
Yes. Loopy asked, which race would you like to face off versus Bret in a DLC, and which units would you like for Bret? Loopy would like the Lost Sons of Bretonnia, the Haramalts, and the Blackguard of Moor / Knights of Moor. You answered the second part of that question, but what race in Game 3... It doesn't have to be a Game 3 race. I'm just saying the next DLC that comes out in Game 3. Bretonnia versus who?
Well, it has to be a Chaos Aligned faction. I don't think Bretonnia would be such a fun faction to face against, like, I don't know, Skaven or Lizards. But give them a DLC against Norska, for example. That would be nice, because Norska could use some new unit. And both are Warhammer 1 factions that, in lore, have a lot of conflict. So I'm pretty sure you can have some interesting picks for both factions, while adding some units to rosters that are not the most elaborated roster unit-wise.
Yeah. And that's a good matchup, too. Like, currently it's Bret favored, but it is very fun. Logic asked something in the chat here. I'm not sure if this has been asked, but do you feel that Bretonnia has been nerfed or buffed in the most recent DLC / free LC on a top level? He means the poison changes and changes to infantry, etc.
Right, so are we talking the last patch or the few last patch altogether?
The one that added Torx and Oxyotl. Silence and Fury.
Alright, so this one definitely was a nerf to Bretonnia. Just because was it? I would put it as a slight nerf to Bretonnia. Because, well, I don't like to talk a lot about the game bugs right now, because it feels like that's already what the community is talking a lot about, and I wanna try to brighten the mood by giving some positivity. But if we're talking about bug issues, Soul Stealers, Traitorkin, and all those stuff being better than they should be, makes for the calf play to be harder, because these are spells that kill model, and since you can't resurrect model, they tend to be the most effective spell against Bretonnian cavalry. So Traitorkin, for example, right now is probably the least fun spell to play against as Bretonnia.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you're aware of the amount of model it kills on other cards.
It does so much damage. I'll show it on
crazy.
Stream in a second, but it is a lot.
It's 2 spirit leeches per unit touched, and if you do that on a blob of cav, sure, it's not gonna damage much the single entities, right? And you might suffer some overcast damage, but you're gonna kill 14 models per cavalry. And if you catch 3 cav, which is not that much of a stretch, right? Because you can force blobs of your own. Well, then you're gonna have some insane value on that spell.
Mm-hmm. So
spells have nerfed Bretonnia, but generally speaking, I think they are still a good race. They are, if we are taking all 15 factions in the game right now, and we do like an Excel of which is number 1, which is number 15, Bretonnia would sit in the higher 7th, right? It's not a contender for top 4. I think top 4 is well established, like there are some faction dominating meta, but Bretonnia still remains a good faction. just not as stupidly strong as it used to be before interaction on cavalry got changed.
Yeah. And on the stream here, I showed that it took about a third of the health off of Knight's Errant unit. It killed 14 models, and you can do that to a whole blob, so
Yeah.
it's pretty good.
And the issue is not so much the health they are losing, because if it was health without model kill, then you could heal that up. You could try to get some tempo in your favor, pull back your cavalry, heal them up, and then bring them in again. No, the fact is that HP you've lost on the cav is HP you can't heal back. If that Fae were, oh well, it's a bunch, right? If there was a damsel casting a spell on that Knight Servants unit, it wouldn't gain any HP. And that's really tough. Especially if we are touching really fast on Beastmen matchup. Beastmen right now, due to those AoE stuff and the addition of Taurox, is a really tough matchup for Bretonnia. Right now, if you're picking a Shaman of Wild on a Tuzgo Chariot, if you are bringing also Taurox and a Minotaur hero, that blob will be hunting down Fae the entire game, will be hunting down any single entities or leadership from Bretonnia, and it has too much of a mass to be ignored because it can run around in your infantry. And the only mass you can provide to block that is Cav, but Cav get counters by that hero blob, that hero core and those spells. So you are left with no real solution but endure, while you are trying to kill the rest of the Beastmen army. And that's not a viable solution right now.
Yes.
So yeah, Bretonnia got a slight nerf in the previous patch, but enough mostly to 1 or 2 matchup.
Yeah. The matchups got better, Bretonnia didn't get worse, but
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Beastmen against Bretonnia got better for Beastmen, and Dark Elf got slightly better against Bretonnia, but it still remains the worst matchup for Dark Elf. So on that end, it's fine.
6 questions left, 2 of which I feel like you've answered. I would ask, what lores of magic should Bret have that they don't? It sounds like you think they have all that they need.
Yes, but if I were, like, if you give me the opportunity to take one lore of magic, yeah, out of the, like, to add to a damsel or to a lord, I think I would probably get lore of metal. Just because sometimes you want to have spells akin to a final transmutation, or to have something to answer high armor targets. And Plague of Rust could really be useful in some matchups.
Yeah, I was thinking Plague of Rust could be really useful. What do you fear most when you bring Bretonnia? This is from Zyphos. And this is more of a generic playstyle thing, like, we fear monsters, or we fear archers, not like, I fear peasant archer number 45 named Ricky, you know.
I think Bretonnia is really well suited to deal with kite builds. It's probably one of the best factions to beat a kite, if not the best. It's a faction that can struggle against a good rush, but if you are prepared enough and if you've practiced it enough, you can face a rush and beat it convincingly. Now the issue I see for Bretonnia and the playstyle I'm most afraid of is a really well made box with armored unit to stop me from just cycle charging the box, if possible, or enough AoE / single entities power to stop my Fae from draining the box, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a few examples of that would be a good Skaven box with poison wind mortars and stuff like that, with enough single entity threat like a Sneakage to stop the Fae from just draining the box. That's something threatening. Or if we're stretching that to other matchups, let's take Empire, who can go all kinds of playstyle. Empire can rush you, Empire can kite you, Empire can box you. The toughest to beat in that matchup is a box, a really well-made box, where you are struggling to get to the juicy part of the Empire build. But it remains Bretonnia favored, even so slightly. So yeah, boxes are probably the toughest to beat as Bretonnia, if they are well-made and they are denying the Fae drain.
Yeah, a lot of factions don't like boxes, but Bretonian players certainly certainly do not enjoy them at all. What? Hammond asks, would you want an archer type brigand / Robin Hood legendary lord? Is that too far from the Bretonnian playstyle?
Legendary Lord, no, I wouldn't want. But as an archer unit, yeah, sure.
Okay. Artisan Tech Priest West asks, what would make the prophetesses actually viable, and why should rock drop be more than one use? It's Assault of Stone.
Well,
but...
I don't know, because Assault of Stone is such a strong ability. More than one use, it would be overpowered. And, well, the issue with Prophetess is that they have the exact same law of magic as the damsels. So there is no really a reason why you would want them instead of your lord. Instead of a regular damsel and just get a better lord. So maybe if you bring all the law of magic with the prophetess, in some matchups they could be interesting. But still, I would most always pick the legendary lords of Bretonnia rather than a prophetess and just bring a damsel. The issue here is also that the heal magic is the best magic ever made for Bretonnia. It really helps you dominate cav fight and reinforce and protect and your cavalry so that they can make the best out of their value and out of the money you are putting into them. So there is not that many law of magic that would be better than heal. So by definition, there is not that many lords that would be better than Fae to accompany the Bretonnian army. So Prophetess would struggle to have any places in that, even with different law of magic.
So she's just not probably ever going to be that viable?
No, I don't think there'll ever be a viable Prophetess.
That's a shame. Assault of Stone is very fun.
Assault of Stone is really fun. I tried at one point to bring Prophetess against the Dwarf to see if I could make use of Assault of Stone and some other debuffs, but no. It's not working.
If you could make any Regiment of Renown unit, what would it be and what would it do? From Hammond.
Well, Regiments of Renown, I think they are all around, like, already done. I don't think there would be a new one competitively that would be interesting. But for the fun of it, I think it would be nice to have Regiments of Renown Grail Knight akin to the Swords of Chaos. That would be a fun unit.
I can imagine that being pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be cool, yeah. So that, or like I said before, Regiments of Renown Paladin, just to get some few names in from the lore.
All right, and then we'll end every interview, as we do, with knowing what we know about Warhammer 3. How do you think Bretonnia will stack up?
I think right now, if the meta was a bit, well, let's say we are talking in an ideal world where Beastman is not as good against Bretonnia as it is right now. Like let's put them on the rank of previous patch. Bretonnia right now could be a viable first pick with enough practice. I think in game 3, the variety of faction, if we are playing under the same competitive rules, will take Bretonnia out of first pick option. But I think Bretonnia will still be a super good faction because they have really good tools to be super strong as a counter pick. And when you've got 21 faction in a game, and more to come likely afterwards, as a counter pick, they are offering really good assets to deal with different kind of playstyles. There will always be a place for Bretonnia against factions that can kite. And that's super strong. I think they will do fine in game 3.
Hank Cyrus wants to know, did I ask about the Moors Griffites? I literally don't know what those are. Do you know?
Oh, yeah. But it's kind of a meme. You know AC Moore?
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So Moor's Graphite is the name everyone gave to that one play he did against Ice Power in the World Cup, where he played Empire against Bretonnia, right? And he was, by all looks, getting ahead in a tough matchup for him. And it was quite impressive. He was playing really well that game. Until he forgot about his Regiments of Redon Demigryphs, the Aldorf's Gryphite. And they got slapped out of existence by 2 Questing Knight. One was the Regiments of Redon, and like no value back, so yeah. Yeah, we need from time to time to flame more a bit for his Gryphite, or else he'll forget about them.
All right. It's a good time flaming players in an interview.
Exactly. It's a good friend, so I have no shame in or no remorse in flaming him.
Yeah. But if it's not flaming ice power, are you even flaming right?
No. Oh no, I'm flaming Morse.
No, I know.
Morse
But
for his terrible play.
I'm just saying, man. If you flame anybody and ice power isn't somehow involved, it's not a good flame.
I could see that.
All right, sir. We have been going for almost 3 hours. I have a couple plugs to do with the chat, but you don't need to sit here through that. You can go to bed or whatever it is you Europeans do at 11 o'clock at night. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your answers, and you have been an absolute champion.
Thank you for having me. It was really fun.
All right, I have left that call. I will now take you all to the left-hand screen. So if you weren't here at the very start of the stream, super quick, we are currently, right now, in my Discord, voting on the next tournament. It will take place Friday. Currently, there are a lot of ties. If you don't want there to be ties, or if something you want to play in isn't being voted for, well, get in there. Vote for it. Jesus. This is just, you gotta take your own destiny into your own hands, man. We have Bretonnia versus Empire Civil War, Tomb Kings versus Vampire Civil War, Lizardman Civil War, thematic trios, best of threes, AI ally, or an insult to me, or kicking someone from the server forever. If you're wondering what the hell a Civil War is, it's where I take all the sub-factions for a certain faction, give them all special rules to make them a little more thematic, and for Bretonnia and Empire, since they are so limited on sub-factions, I just clump them together, because that matchup is kind of fun for both parties. Same with Tomb Kings and Vampirates, etc., etc. Go there, vote. And other than that, I don't have anything else for you all. Have a good day. Bye.